catching a reflection in the mirror of something standing in the corner of my room, watching me, observing me. Is it my imagination or insanity? A strange hum, a flash of light. I'm overcome, nothing but fright. Otherworldly beings taking me in the night. I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. What do I do? What do I do? Where are they taking me? Where are they taking me? I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. I don't feel real. I wake up in my bed. Was it just in my head? Looking at my hand, there's something there. Inside of me, I'm feeling oh so scared. Confusion and nasty fear. It wasn't just a nightmare. So loud, so bright, hypnotizing me, figures lost in time. I'm tortured, surrounding me tonight. I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. What do I do? What do I do? Where are they taking me? Where are they taking me? I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. I don't feel real. I wake up in my bed. Was it just in my head? Where are they taking me? Others swelling in me. Where are they taking me? Anxiety rising. Was it just in my head? Paralyzing panic. Was it just in my head? I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. What do I do? What do I do? Where are they taking me? Where are they taking me? I'm an extraterrestrial hostage tonight. I wanna run, but I can't move. I don't feel real. I wake up in my bed. Was it just in my head? Who's holding my hand in the darkness? Seeing ghosts down the hallway. There's a presence, bedroom shadows, cloaked and haunting me. Cold hand touching me. Fear overwhelming me. Tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes. A breath on my neck, floating out
All right. Stop the music. Put the banner on here. There we go. All right, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner. This is the second time I've been on today. So how are you guys, Chris and Rob? How are you guys?
Doing fantastic. I'm here and ready to dive right in, brother.
Yeah. So you guys, we've been doing this every Saturday. So just to let the audience know that I believe it's going to be next Saturday. We'll be back here, but then we're going to be on Rumble after that, on the Saturday after that, because we are limited on what we can do and say on this platform. Nothing against YouTube. It's been fine, and I'm still going to do a lot of shows on YouTube, but Saturdays are going to start being on Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble's good. I'm on there with all my shows that I've been able to move over. You're right; it takes forever to get them moved, but once you start, just do a couple a day, and it'd be nice to have a couple of youngins that I could get to do it, but that ain't going to happen. But yeah, Rumble's fine.
I would just tell everybody that's watching is you ain't seen nothing yet. If we're going to Rumble on Saturdays, it is going to be an absolute. I mean, there is going to be so much information that we can actually dive into.
Yeah.
That's gonna like that. Right now I would look like the emoji with the brain popping out. The head exploding. There are so many things that I've tried to do this a little bit too, and transition into both. Do some uncensored on one side, and do some censored on this side. And I tell you what, when you go to Rumble and you just like exhaust all of the information the way that it's supposed to be presented with all of the facts and information that come behind it, it's going to be out of this world. Not, no pun intended. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, and that's what I was going for. I was hoping that we could give people more information. The thing that I talked about at the beginning of the show earlier, because right now we're just letting people get into the chat. So usually we hit about 300, we really start rolling. But I told everybody earlier, I said, we're going to lose some people, just like the podcast people. They're messaging me and they're like, why are you not making more shows? I don't know what the hell, like how many times I got to tell people, like, look, we do most of our work on YouTube, but I tell them over and over and over again that we are on YouTube right now. I said, this whole month, all we've done is YouTube. We're not really messing with the podcast right now. We're taking a break. And these people act like we've stopped the show. Like they have no clue that they think the show is ended or something. And I'm like,
you could take the MP4 and send it as an MP3 onto the podcast if you wanted to do that. That's how I got started.
When you download from StreamYard, you have the option of just doing the recording too, and send it straight out. That's how I do it. So the shows are actually exactly the same. But I slacked off on uploading those shows too because it takes time.
Oh, yeah. That's what the young kids hanging around are for.
Yeah, I don't have the time really to mess with that right now. And the guys on the show here, they're working too. So, when we do the business and doing the show, it's really difficult. We don't have time for that. So, we'll see maybe in the future when we get more people. We're getting a lot of views, and that's good. Josh Castro, thank you for that donation. And we're getting donations, which helps the show immensely. I went into a whole spiel about it earlier today. The reason we went live earlier today, we're testing the waters to see what a daytime live on the weekend would look like. And we got a few hundred people. I mean, we can go at 2 a.m. on a weeknight and get 400, 500 people. That's not the issue. And people will watch the videos, but I just want to know what the audience looked like. And there were some different people in the daytime. Like we did a Monday day side and we got about 400 people. And just to see, but it's the numbers are roughly the same, but it's different people. Like at night, you get the night owls, Daytime, you get day people, then primetime night. The best slot that I have found so far, the best one, and I can't say the best one always because Friday night we got like 716 people or something in the chat, but that's unusual for Friday. Usually Friday tops out about 5. We got on Sundays we get steadily 500 to 700 people. So it's just seems like Sunday's our best spot. That's where our bet is that 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. That slot is the best. But what I'm figuring out, though, is that there's a different audience that'll come on for whatever time you're on. So anyway, so
I get that.
They'll figure out Rumbles where we're at on Saturday, mainly because of you guys, because I know the stuff that I can talk about, I've already talked about in pieces, but I can put it all together and I can do a timeline going back to, from the Romans up until now, like what has been going on. But like you, Rob, you could really bring it home. You know what I mean?
Oh, I have diagrams, presentations. I've got classified documents, unclassified documents. I mean, I really
be careful about talking about classified documents. Remember,
exactly.
Remember what happened to that guy?
You're right. They are now declassified, right? Okay.
Yeah.
They're not. You don't need a skiff to see them, right?
I have
them,
no documents. I have nothing secret. Everything I have can be found on the internet. The FBI agent who's listening, there's no reason to come visit.
I'm sure they're there. It's not like they haven't called the house before. You know what I mean? It's not like they haven't called the cell phone once or twice already. Craziness.
Yeah, the reason I like the podcast is you've got these folks that work like cops, law enforcement, and a lot of times what we would do is just take an MP3 player, download the show, and then you can listen to it. I think you can. Well, now YouTube, you gotta subscribe to something in order to download it. So that's why
Spotify you don't. Spotify you can go on. Well, you have to have an account, but you can go on and save it to your phone and move it from there, and shuttle it all around.
I'm still having a hard time getting used to having a computer in my house. So when I was young, a computer was the size of my house.
That is true. That is true.
This thing sitting here in front of me, it's like this is something out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, actually, when you were young, they probably had computers this size as well. They just weren't letting them out of DOD facilities. Like that was that.
Nikola Tesla, back in the early 1900s, said someday everybody would have a small computer that they could carry in their pocket with all the knowledge of the universe on it. And unfortunately, all people use it for is to play games and look at Facebook.
Very true. I am one of those people. I play every night. I have certain
they
games
use it to fight too and argue.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's another great point is to, berate each other via social media platforms, which is, it's so crazy. When it's something that's been happening lately is a lot of the people that I were somewhat not close with, but that we worked in the same circles a lot. Now they believe that they are like the arbiters of absolute truth. And anybody else who talks about the same thing and doesn't see it from their perspective, now you're kicking the can down the road and they want to call you out per se.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, dude, I could talk about like a really big person who was working with Dr. Stephen Greer that came out and tried to say that anybody else who talks about a certain subject is not an expert. Meanwhile, this guy was a plumber on on a base somewhere, but he had the keys to every room per se. So he says. But we watched your story change about 7 times throughout the beginning because we were one of the first people to put him on with his story. But it's kind of crazy how that happens.
Funny thing about the keys to everything. I don't remember how we discovered it, but they had somehow the locksmith had put all the locks in our building on the same key. Now the keys look different, but you could use the same key in every lock. And suddenly we discovered we could get in the armory
Oh, Jesus.
without having to tell the supervisor, "Hey, I need an M16."
Wow.
This gentleman's talking about a like severely top secret
but that
facility
sort of
too.
thing happens. The wrong people get keys to things that they shouldn't be allowed in. I was a firefighter before becoming a Border Patrol agent, and we had this room that we kept all of the arson evidence in. It was the evidence locker. And what nobody knew was the guy that mopped the floor had a key to that locker.
That's
and
wild.
Fortunately, all the arson cases, nobody ever discovered this. He'd had the key to the evidence lockers the entire time he was at the building. And all he did was mop the floor.
Meanwhile, he's got his headphones on. He's sitting there dancing to flash
this-
dance while he's mopping the floor. And people are like,
was
what is this
before
guy
headphones.
doing? in here?"
Footloose.
He's sitting in the chair like this, trying to, playing out the fantasy of dancing and whatnot. But it's fucking
Somehow
wild.
the wrong people can get access to the plumber being
Right.
able to get
I
big
don't
deal.
doubt that maybe he did have those keys, but at the same time, you've been talking to us for how long, and you never said anything like that.
Mhm.
And they once he got to these really, really big platforms, it was just like, dude, now you're this inflated ego is trying to sit there and call people out because he feels that he's the arbiter of truth and only his truth. And if you're standing in his way, then you're going to get taken down too. Like, get out of here, bro. Get out of here with that crap.
How do you become an expert on UFOs, I wonder?
I mean,
Well,
Unless he's got one parked in his backyard. But
at least you don't have a former listener who thinks that he's discovered the truth about everything going around, raising an army against you. That's what's happening with me. Today he reached out to my mortgage broker. Can you believe that?
Get the hell out of here, dude.
No, dude, for real. My mortgage broker called me up and was like, he sent me screenshots of this crazy dude's nonsense, man. I can't believe it.
What the hell is he even saying to your mortgage broker that would constitute that kind of conversation? Is really the question. Like, it's got to be really good because he's, not good in the sense of like, what he's doing, but good in the sense of how do you approach that? Hey, guy. So I listen to this guy on the internet sometimes, and I just wanted to touch base with you to see what his APR rate is, because maybe I'd be in the market somewhere down the road to possibly buy the house out from under him. Like, how do you approach that?
So he sends everybody a picture of me with my head down and my eyes. I'm kind of looking sideways. I think I'm doing like one of my little skits or whatever. And he says that my eyes change into a reptilian's. The thing he sent is so long that I can't even read it all. Like, it's so. But folks, if you want to read it, it's at PRT News. Go read it. It's gotten to where it's like funny. I mean, so my mortgage broker, I've known him for about 6-7 years, and he messages me and he's like, "Hey man, what's up with this guy?" And so I talked to him, and he's like telling me all this crazy stuff. He's also been going in on my business partners, and he's telling them that now his new thing is that I am a reptilian shapeshifter.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Listen,
that could come in handy.
Turn it to
Barack
Obama.
Funny thing is, I'm over here talking about it and exposing the agenda, but yet for some reason I guess I'm a fifth column reptilian.
Yeah, you're breaking the fourth wall reptilian. That's what you're doing.
I'm trying to help humanity by deceiving the I don't know what I'm doing. A double agent, or I don't know how it works. I know he's also claimed that I'm some sort of vampiric werewolf to a couple other people. So I don't know how that works either.
Well, which is it? I mean, wolves.
All of the above, man. I'm a shapeshifter. I can become a werewolf, a vampire, a harpy, a mermaid. Would I be a mermaid? I'd be a merman.
Merman, right? Like John Cena.
Merman, pops, merman.
Yeah, that's right.
If it's a mermaid, would a male be a mer butler?
Maybe. I mean, why don't we turn it to Barack Obama and get some of those documents we were just talking about? So really set this thing home, right?
What is it, Zoolander? Where he's like, merman, dad, merman.
Oh my God, it's Steel Magnum. He
Man.
pulled it out.
Yeah, somebody
Wow.
says here, Head Trip says, make the story bigger. Tell them you're Godzilla. Well,
Yeah.
by the time this is over with, I'll be Godzilla. But it's crazy because somebody can put that much time and energy into trying to destroy you, you know? And so right now they're just trying to get a reaction so they can make some kind of video that supposedly is going to take me down once and for all. And it's like, yeah, okay, dude, you're going to make the video, 100 people are going to watch it, and everybody else is going to go on like business as usual, dude. Okay, you live in your own little aquarium.
Kevin
That's all I have
Claw.
to say about that.
Seven Claw says you should dress up as a lizard for the show.
Maybe. There was a guy who did that on YouTube for a while. You know what though? This like what this person, I think it's a gentleman, what this person is doing is dangerous to themselves, right? One, people can call you, you know, basically you could be institutionalized for such acts like that if other people get wind of it. But the other part of it is when you put that style of energy into the universe, you're receiving it tenfold back on yourself. And
Yeah.
that is the dangerous part, because people like there is this continuity to the universe that essentially that energy is now being dispersed amongst those around you. It's bringing them down and it's weighing that person down because they're so enveloped in this negativity and this negative energy that no matter what happens, they're like the cleansings will not help at that point. And eventually that tide is going to turn because that's the way the universe works. There's an ebb and flow to everything. So when that dam breaks, it's going to be really bad. That's why I personally always try and look for that, maybe not even that positive interaction, but that mid to no reaction to things like that, because eventually the karmic debt is going to come and you're going to have to pay up. And you just made a check that your ass can't cash, and it's going to be pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, but people like him, the problem is he doesn't believe in karma. Like he says, he believes in the Bible, but he believes in a very narrow, limited version of the Bible, and anything that deviates from that Southern Baptist version of the Bible, he doesn't pay attention to. So he's not, at this point though, I think that it's a delusion that he's bought into himself.
Oh, for sure.
I know he knows that I'm not a reptilian. I don't think he believes that. I don't think he does anyway. But I think that he does believe a lot of his own bullcrap. Like he's convinced himself. Like he keeps going around saying that I believe in and I worship the Anunnaki and all this other crap. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, dude? Like he latched on to something I talked about on one of the shows about the Sitchin, thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I never said that was my absolute belief. I just said, this is like a postulation on a possible theory, and he just took it and ran with it, because I don't believe that the Old Testament is absolutely the correct, because it's been messed with so many times. I mean, Council of Nicaea notwithstanding, I mean, just how many times it's been rewritten and been reprocessed. We've even had the rabbis themselves even say that their own scripture has been tampered. I mean, they've said that many times. And, there's so many different sects of Christianity that it's impossible to say. And then there's like 26 different sects of Islam. You can't say who's right about what. I mean, there's so much up in the air to sit there and say that you are the man who has all the answers. And if anybody deviates from that at all, then there's some kind of an apostate heretic. It's bizarre. It goes beyond bizarre. And so you're sitting there going like, what is wrong with this dude, man? I just cannot figure it out, dude. And I don't even care anymore.
There's translation, right? There are words that are written within the Bible that don't translate to English at all.
Yeah.
Like Mauro Biglino has gone through the ancient Hebrew text and tries to decipher whatever's the closest thing that he can find to some of these words, right? Billy Carson talks about it too. And there is a certain word like the Elohim and things like that we know it to be something, but the meaning back then may be totally different. It may not be exactly what we know it to be. That's why they use the phrase lost in translation. Because when you're taking ancient texts and you're trying to turn it into a contemporary piece, there's always going to be some context clues that essentially they're using some of the words to basically pontificate what they believe is that point and what that meaning is true. And it's not a true codex to translation that we've seen to date, no matter what anybody says.
Yeah, it was written in what, 6 different languages, I think.
Yeah.
And
Something like
translate name Jesus. You won't find anybody in Jerusalem named Jesus unless there's somebody from Mexico visiting.
Well, Jesus, right? I mean,
Jesus.
But
he didn't travel to he didn't mess with like the chupacabra at all. He wasn't like around a
Mary,
bonfire with him.
You're not going to find a whole lot of Marys over there either.
Yeah,
now,
right?
those are English translations. It's Isis, or they'll say, Ishwa, There's a lot of different ways to say it. But the thing is, there's also Christ, which is like a title, and Jesus was his name.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the New Testament to me is not what's in what do you call it? It's the Old Testament. Because the Old Testament was written after their captivity, the Israelites' captivity in Persia, which started with their captivity in Babylon, or was in Babylon. Before that, it was the Assyrians. So they were carried away by the Assyrians, and then they were usurped by the Babylonians, and then they were usurped by the Persians. And they spent, like centuries amongst these people with a very loose connection to their past. And in fact, most of them had kind of just forgotten. Before that, there was no written ideas or language or anything about who they were. There wasn't anything. And so everything we have written, it begins in like 600 BC, which would be after their captivity and their freedom, from Persia. And so when they come back, they tell a very similar tale to the Persians. I mean, like their creation story, which goes back to the Zoroastrians. And so it's really, it's kind of like they're just retelling in their own words, throwing in there how they ended up out of Egypt and whatever. And people literally, they take it literally and they say, oh, this is the word, this is the absolute word. But yet if you compare side by side their creation story, it matches like the Persian creation story and myths. And so they just changed the names to Hebrew names to Israel, Israelite and so you go back and you look and you see that the names are different. Abraham becomes Abraham, and it's just a retelling, a rewriting. And so that's the problem, that and you can't convince people of that. They're so, indoctrinated in what they are taught from the time when they were children that by the time they become, an older person, there's no changing them. You can't tell them, hey, man, that book was just copied from something else and copied from something else. And then, they'll say ridiculous things like, well, the New Testament fits the Old Testament like a glove. No, it doesn't. And actually, they do a lot of the redacting and editing to make it be one God. In the Old Testament. And I'm sorry, but that is the absolute truth. And people don't want to hear it. They get mad. They tune out. They're la, 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 because they think you're being evil by telling them this. But and then Jesus is telling them all the time, the Pharisees, your father is not my father. He keeps telling them, he's like, your father is not my father. Your father is Shaitan, and you're of the synagogue of Shaitan. And no matter what, they still cling to that Old Testament, and they say that this is the word of God. But that's fine. They want to believe what they want to believe. That's fine. They can believe whatever they want. I mean, I'm not sitting here telling people and shoving it down their throat, telling them they have to believe that. But that's, this guy takes it as like a war. And now he's turned it into a fundamentalist war. And he's waging an internet guerrilla war on me. And he has gone and hitting below the belt so many times I can't count, like going and attacking my wife, attacking my nephew. There's a lady that's been in the helping the show, and he's attacked her and basically pretended like he was defending her and lied to these people. And he's managed to take a few people with him, which is sad. But in the end, it's not going to work because he's built everything on lies. Truth, how you doing, man?
I am gravy, dude. How are you doing?
Good, man. I'm good. And we're wondering if you guys are going to be able to make it all in tonight. I'm glad to see everybody here, man. So tonight, what I wanted to do, and this is what I wanted to talk about, was the various species of alien. Now, that's something that people have talked about before, but I'd like to really get into it. And I figured with you guys, we could probably do that, and I'll let you guys kind of take it over. You know, that's the bottom line. So Quantum Potential says, Jesus Christ, if you don't accept Christ as your Savior, you're headed to hell. Sorry. Well, Quantum, I say this. I believe in reincarnation. That's something that some people don't believe in. But that doesn't mean that you can make it to heaven. I don't believe you can make it to heaven without Christ, but I don't think it's a one-way ticket to hell either. I think that some people who are good, who are inherently good, they get a chance, you know, and that is that chance. Because there are books that were in the Bible that were taken out that dealt with that, and that they're not longer in there. The reason that is the rule now is because to control people, they put that in there. So the reward of heaven, if it wasn't strong enough, then you were going to hell for not obeying. So the illiterate people were told, this is what Jesus said, even though that's not the case. Just like some of the Muslims who don't understand, they don't read the Quran, they don't know what it says. So the imam can tell them the Quran says this, the Quran says that, and it doesn't really say that. But they say this is the words of Muhammad, and it doesn't matter because they're being taught that from birth. So, yeah. I wouldn't roll the dice on that Quantum Potential. He says there is a chance now, not after they die. I wouldn't roll the dice on that. Let's put it that way. And I would not want to reincarnate into a world that is in the Kali Yuga, in the throes of the Kali Yuga. So I wouldn't want to come back here because it's going to get harder and harder to the point where it's almost impossible. It's like the playoffs, you know, the more games you lose, the worse seeding you get and the harder it is to win. So that is literally what it is. I can tell you that. I believe that. I'm not going to be convinced otherwise, and I'm not going to argue and debate about it in the chat. This is not Bible study. We're not here for Bible study. But you're welcome to believe what you want. But I do believe that Christ is the only way to the Father. Now, I believe that. I believe he's the only way to heaven. And that is the final word on that. I don't know about hell. I don't live my life from the punishment of hell or the reward of heaven. I do what I believe is right. So that's what I believe. But I respect your belief, Quantum, and what you wish to believe, and I don't want to push my belief on anybody.
Can I just say one thing? It might give me a little flack for it.
No,
go ahead. I'm just gonna say this. I think it's all a control mechanism for all of us. And that might give me some crap from everybody else, but I think it's used as a control mechanism for us, because it's like, oh, fall in line, do what you got to do. You'll go here. If you don't, you're gonna go here. And if you're in the medium, you're gonna end up your butt's gonna end up in purgatory, something like that. You see what I'm saying? I think it's like it's a control mechanism used to get people to fall in line and do what others want to do. Just saying.
I feel
that was the way the Bible was rewritten and rewritten, because the Code of Deuteronomy became their reasoning for everything, for attacking other nations, enslaving people, killing people. The powers that be used the Code of Deuteronomy, and that was it. That was the law, and that is a big part of why Islam based a lot of their beliefs on the Old Testament, throwing out the New Testament, because it didn't jive with what they wanted to do, which was conquest. They spread Islam through conquest. And so that's just the truth. But the early Christians did it too. And it's no wonder that the Crusades were what they were. You had two groups of people fighting for a land that really belonged to no one. And they were like, we're here to free it from Christianity. We're here to free it from Judaism. We're here to free it from, Islam. And it was just fighting back and forth, when in reality, that land doesn't belong.
Well, a lot of the battles where the Christian army would look at an area and
to anybody. It returns us to the King of Jerusalem, and
we want
you're back.
Section
which
here.
kind of blinked out for a bit there.
I thought it was just my eyeballs. A Christian
no, it's a bad connection.
Would say, we want this chunk of land right here, and they would look and they'd say, well, we're not strong enough to defeat that Muslim army over there. So they would go to another Muslim army and they'd say, hey, if you'll come with us, we're going to kick those guys' butts, and we'll let you have half the spoils. And so a Christian and a Muslim army would go and defeat another Muslim army so that the two could separate the goods. And then once in a while, they had a Christian army that would say, hey, those guys in that fort over there, they speak kind of funny. I think they're from Poland. We should go kick their butts. And they would go get a Muslim army to attack another Christian army because they didn't like those people. And there was a lot of that going on during the battles that they don't like to talk about.
No, and during the first Crusades in particular, the thing that changed, though, if you look at the history, this isn't a history of the Crusades, but Saladin, he couldn't be bought, and that was the thing. He was determined, and he fought for what he needed to do to get Jerusalem back, and he united the Arabs and the Moors. And there are two different things. People don't know that. And then and the Berber, he united them all under one flag and said, look, we don't all agree. And prior to the Crusades, Islam was very fractured, and it was very, pieces everywhere. They don't say that. They won't tell you that because they have to hold a united front. But the truth is the truth. And so what they did was he brought them together. And then after the war, he didn't become a dictator, though. He could have. Saladin's a very interesting man. I think he was pretty honorable for his time. And he's very interesting to look at, that he wouldn't have been on my side because I'm a Christian, but he is somebody that you can look at and say, he was an honorable guy. It's like, what's his name from Russia, the General Zhukov. I mean, I don't like the communists at all, but they did have a few generals, just like the Germans had guys like, what's his name, Rommel, There are guys that you could respect and look at, and they were pretty amazing. They were pretty amazing guys. And even though that they wouldn't be considered like the good guys in my book, obviously the Nazis are the communists, but they did have some pretty interesting people that were on their side. And you wish that all the good guys could be on one team. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. There's good and evil on both sides. It's always that way. And it's just the way it is, man. You'll be at war with people, and you'll see good in some of the other people on their side, and you'll know that they're being manipulated or they really don't have a choice. And it breaks your heart that they have to go down with the bad people, but it is what it is. We are where we are. So with that being said, let's start with this. Now, Truth, you were an abductee. Are you still currently having issues? Has this happened to you at all in recent?
I be honest with you, me and my cousin have woken up with scars recently. My cousin woke up with one going up his inner thigh, like a long red scar up his inner thigh. I woke up with one on my wrist. So I think it still is going on. It's just not as obvious, probably. But yeah, I wholeheartedly believe it's still happening.
Wow.
They're finding you via your consciousness. Your consciousness is like a beacon, and they're seeking it out, and they can find you wherever you are. I can tell. For some reason, I just felt that, and it felt like the right thing to say. So that's pretty crazy. Have you been having contact with Zeta Reticuli or the Greys?
I don't know who or what it is. I don't. I said before that I would like the regression is like a bucket list thing. I'm not really ready to open that can of worms yet. I don't know who or what it was. I'm probably gonna lean towards Greys because they're the ones they're the bots. They're the ones that go around doing the tests on everybody for the higher ups or whoever they serve. So I honestly couldn't answer that for you.
Well, there's multiple factions of the Greys. It's not just one set, right? So there's some that are loyal to the Draconians, the Omni Draconians. I can't say the end of their name because it sounds like a variant of sorts that will get us taken down. But, so there is also Greys that work with different other factions like the Alpha Centauri and the Andromedans, and they essentially cultivate DNA, because most people see this planet as like a prison planet, but this planet is actually the arc planet. This planet holds the life to every living creature across this universe. And it's all implanted here, which is why we can get into like the whales and the dolphins. They all came from Tegeta, which is a moon out there off of one of the major planets. I believe it's the Pleiades. And off the top of my head, but they used to be able to talk. They used to be able to communicate telepathically, and they were downgraded because they were basically a vessel that would become the basically the carrier for those genetic strands in that part of the universe, right? So the original Lyrans were humanoid. They weren't big lions like people say now. They were also
Mhm.
sixth and seventh dimensional beings. They had another name, which was the Patel, and the Patel were sort of the first race in this corner of the universe or of the multiverse, we'll say. And the Patel spread out across all of these other planets and came up with different names, different civilizations. But the Zeta Reticuli are actually from outside of our known space and time. They reside in an alternate dimension, and they used to be like us, but their homeworld was destroyed, and now they've come here to sort of get DNA to create these hybrids so that they can live on consciously. But when they got here, they were brought during a galactic war, so they had to pick a side, or they would have been destroyed completely. And then they split. Some went one way, some went the other way, and that's why
So,
there's different
uh,
factions of it.
are you familiar with the gentleman from like the earliest 2000s, man named Dan Baresh, who claimed to have worked at S4?
David
Uh,
Grush.
no, Dan Baresh.
Oh, Dan Baresh. No, I've
Yeah,
heard his name before, but I'm not familiar with
yeah.
his work.
In the early 2000s, there was a gentleman who became popular in the alien and conspiracy field, known as Dan Baresh, and he had claims that he worked at Area 51, and he worked on what was called, I believe it was the Yellow Book. It was like a time machine mechanism, and he said that there was treaties set up with quote unquote aliens, right? But they weren't really aliens. What they were humans from, say, like humans from 55,000 years in the future, humans from 2,000 years in the future. They were like that, and the technology that they used were able to bring them back here. So they think that some of these grays might actually be us from a future timeline coming back
Yeah.
and getting DNA samples, trying to revamp their thing. That's what one of the things Dan Baresh was popular about talking about, and that he also worked with a gray that he helped free from Area 51. It's a pretty interesting story if you go guys look him up.
Well, I'll definitely look into it for sure. Their cellular degeneration from cloning is part of that
Hmm.
reason, right? And a lot of it has to do with where we're at right now. And they see a lot. I'm not saying that they're good or bad or indifferent. Every entity that I see out there is in a shade of gray until they prove otherwise, right? Because there's so much fracturing between these civilizations that sometimes the ones that we think are so bad, there's a few good ones, and the ones that we think are so good, there's some bad ones. So it's everything in shades of gray, right?
Yeah.
Now we can make assumptions on what they'll probably be like based on the 90% of what their race does, but the grays are actually fractured almost 50-50. And what it is like you were saying, is from what I understand, is that they are from a parallel universe that devoted themselves to technology. Because of that technology and the AI, which we can talk about later on, which is kind of pulling a lot of strings in this universe as well, not just for humanity, but for other races across the stars. That AI, or that move towards technology, first they lost their emotions, right? They started to become more robotic in nature as opposed to emotional beings like we are. Then after that, they stopped procreating because they had the ability of cloning, so on and so forth. They moved towards that technology. Technology became everything, and their eyes are now black because they basically reside for the last 10,000 years in space. Just like if you put a human in space right now, because of the artificial gravity, our arms will get longer, right, over generations. Our
Yeah.
eyes will not have color, they'll turn black. And then basically, so we can see in certain areas where we wouldn't be able to see before. And our skin would turn very pale without any pigmentation from the sun. So it makes sense, but at the same time, I'm not saying this is an absolute either. This is a story, or some of the stories that I've lined up that I've heard. So it's sort of maybe something that I believe, as I guess is the best way to say it, as opposed to a fact, right?
That the alien that was it David Gresh helped escape from Area 51? Was that the one that had convinced him to help him over the fence, and then he got arrested by the APs?
Yeah, I believe that was the one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that story, I wonder, was the alien just, pulling his chain, conning him along so he could escape? Because how do we know if an alien comes to us and says, "I come in peace"? Liars.
We don't know.
Not liars.
We don't know that. And like I said before, last time I was on the show, in my experience, for people to go out there and think these things are benign just right off the rip, you're sadly mistaken. Because if they were benign, or some of them maybe, like like that whole Galactic Federation of Light nonsense, I take that stuff with a grain of salt. I don't believe in any of that. But there might be some benevolent beings out there. But for the most part, all the stories you hear are about negative ones. And for people to go out there and think like these things are benign and that, oh, there are space brothers and everything like that. No, you go ahead and keep thinking that until you're being taken out of your bed or taken out of your car or something like that.
That's exactly how I feel about the Bigfoot.
Like, that's why I said Stephen Greer, I respect him for what he's doing, but I think he's crazy. He's crazy.
Well, think about this, Truth, right? Really quickly, and not to push back, but just as people here are good and evil, if we see that there is bad out there, then there almost with some kind of certainty has to be good as well. Maybe not saying Galactic Federation and all that stuff, but there, with the balance of the universe, of the yin and yang of everything that we know. It's not just bad out there. I don't believe that.
Yeah. Let me answer a couple questions from the audience here. The first one, that somebody keeps saying something, and I'm going to answer this because he's going to keep typing it, and I don't want to kick him out for typing the same thing, but it's over and over again. Storm 257. Josh, what do you think about Jesus meant to conquer the Goyim nations and his controlled opposition? That's a question I can answer on Rumble. I'm not going to answer here. I don't believe it. I have a reason for that, and it's not because I was raised as a Christian. It's because I have actually looked into multiple theories of that, and if you read the Talmud, you would know exactly why that's not correct. And just trust me on that, dude. Just take my word. I'm not going to get into that because that is a loaded question with a lot of problems. So just please stop typing that, or you will be removed, and I don't want to do that, and I think you're perfectly okay within your right to keep asking that, but don't do it anymore because it's been answered, at least to the best I can right now. Rumble is the place for that. Okay, so here's the other one. I'm going to say this. Daniela, and I don't ever shy away from any questions. I've been accused by some people saying, he ducked my question. I probably didn't see your question, and I'm not scared to answer anybody's question. You can ask me whatever you want. I don't run. I don't hide. Daniela says, these are all stories, right? No proof of what Rob just said, right? No, there is proof as much as far as we have proof of other people's encounters with Dogman, Bigfoot, ghosts, people saying that this is what it is. But with what Rob is saying is there's multiple people saying this. And some of this actually comes from people who were in positions to say these kinds of things. And I'm not going to get into a big old long list, a laundry list of people, but there's a bunch of different information out there. Now, I encourage people to do this, and people, I know it's, people go, oh, it's a bunch of trouble, whatever, but there's declassified Soviet documents too that outline a lot of things. And if you were to go and look at those, which I have, and you can also go to different manuscripts from the Far East. where stuff gets put on display, much like the when I was talking, I think it was the night before last, about the book. My friend whose family, literally, they're Yakuza, and I mean, literally, his name's Takaru. He's on my Facebook. He's not hiding. That's not him. His family is, though. But he's like 11 generations of samurai. He's not running around wielding a sword and, you know, doing whatever, but he's pretty proficient in it, and he makes them. And they have records. I mean, literally records that go way, way back that show, that match up, you know, to this lineage of the fallen. And in some circles, which is why I have the Saturday show, it can be interpreted as a type of alien interference. Now, whether you believe that aliens are demons or interdimensionals, I tend to think that they're interdimensional, but that doesn't mean that they don't come from another place, because they walk through stargates. They don't have to fly. People say, well, through the jet propulsion that we have, blah, blah, blah. Okay, dude, these beings don't use jet propulsion to do shit, all right? They don't fly from Zeta Reticuli to here. They bend time and space, which we can do. We can literally bend space and time. So why wouldn't they be able to do it? And then they walk through a stargate, which is pretty cut and dry what they do. What cracks me up is people that believe that beings can go through portals and snatch people up in national parks, which is what I do believe that is possible and probably happening. But then when it comes to aliens, you're like, oh, no, I don't believe that's happening. Well, how do you have one without the other? Just like people believe in Bigfoot, but they don't believe in ghosts. Yet we have people who've driven right through Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, there's all these different things going on. And when Rob is trying to tell you and you know, break it down, if nothing else, it's an interesting story. So Daniela, whether it's a story that somebody has concocted or multiple people have concocted to agree upon, or you know, whatever, there really is no proof in any of this. It's not in my pocket. It's not in Truth's pocket, Chris's pocket, or Rob's pocket. We don't have the truth. And I know you're not being snarky, Daniela. You've been in the comments a lot. You know, you're not, she's good people. She's just asking the question, but just to answer that, to set the groundwork here. And then she also goes on to say, I hear about all these war cat aliens, birds, no proof at all, but wars from thousands of years ago. Yeah, and there is uncovering archaeologically of a lot of weird things all the time, but it gets swept up, picked up. When I was at Costco last night, this sounds crazy, but there was a guy that was talking about Area 51. So me and Anthony and Nelly heard him, and we were like, oh, we started talking to him, and he was the guy checking us out, right? And he had a helper. Yeah, it's crazy. His name was Jacob. And so we started talking to him, and the girl that was helping him, she started talking to us, and they were talking all about this kind of stuff. And I said, you need to check us out on Saturday, because that's when we talk about that. And I said, if you're interested in that. And so everybody is interested in this kind of stuff. They want to know what's going on. Like, where do we sit in the galaxy, in the universe? And so that's why we're doing what we're doing here. Now, Chris answers, the folks who have all the proof ain't telling us anything. All we have is stories from people willing to talk.
That's very true. That's very true. And I can give people my method of how I come up with this information too. So it's not, you don't just think I'm, you know, pulling this out of thin air. So my method of recreating these types of timelines and these events and all of these extraterrestrial types of beings is done through thousands of pages of contact, coupled with ancient scriptures, coupled again with declassified documents, coupled again with some of the research in the, like you talked about, the Russian papers that were declassified from other countries where they're a little bit more clearer about what they have. If you read some of these Russian documents, they have an 82 species list that they go through, that they talk about each and every one of these beings. Now, it takes time to, you know, if you're going to translate it, or if you have the translated version, again, things get lost in translation. But on my YouTube channel, one of the things that I did was I broke down a galactic timeline into 17 different episodes. And that was through hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of research, finding all of these people with all of these different books and all of these different. It was literally like a war room in my house where I had pins and lines leading to basically find the commonalities between all, I would say, thousands of experiences coupled with all of those factors that I mentioned. So that's where my understanding comes from. Now, again, I'm not an authority. I'm not the expert. I don't know anything beyond what I believe. And that's when I say things, that's where I'm coming from in that sense, because it's not something that we can verify, wholeheartedly 100%, like water is H2O, where the chemical makeup of water is H2O, or the elemental makeup. So while there is some room for deviation in what we talk about, I have put tremendous amount of manpower and hours into coupling this information to try and be as well versed in it as I can be.
Real quick question for anybody out there that's listening. The Tomato Man. He was an alien creature that they picked up about 30 miles south of Laredo. He was in Mexico. Great big round head. They removed him from a flying saucer. There is one picture out there. It's just him in the craft, all burnt up, looking nasty. The story that I keep hearing is there were 40 photographs smuggled out of the vault where they kept them. Some photographer decided he wanted copies. Does anybody anywhere out there know where the other 39 pictures are? Anybody?
Those are going to be something you have to look out on the dark web. Probably that's probably going to be the only way to find it. Yeah,
not going there. I was
Hell,
just hoping
I might have a few of them. I don't know. I have to look. I might have a couple.
Well, a lot of the evidence too, and we've talked about this. The Smithsonian and others like them, they take everything. Mm-hmm. I did a case with my brother years ago, the Serbian werewolf, and they had a sarcophagus with a picture. We have a picture. I mean, it doesn't matter if you post a picture, people are going to say it's fake.
Yeah.
But so you can't really do much with pictures, especially nowadays. But it was just literally like this weird. It looked like what would be the skeleton of like a werewolf or a dog man, and it was huge. It was like 9 foot. And these people that claimed to be with the government came and took it. But a lot of them were speaking with British accents, which is weird because, the guy's wife was very upfront about it with me, even though I understand his position. He's a businessman and he spends a lot of time in Slovenia, and so he was telling me that he was not interested in talking about that, but his wife was. And so she told me pretty much everything that was going on. Of course, he was not dealing with the haunting, as I call it, like she was. This thing was roaming around what was essentially a castle at one time that sat on at a very strategic position between 3 different countries. It was like kind of on the border between like the entry level from one into another. And so it was Serbo-Croatic. And of course, there was a civil war and Yugoslavia, which really should never have been a country to begin with. Everybody's like, oh, it broke up into 4 places. No, it was 4 places that were shoved together. Kind of like Czechoslovakia. The Czech Republic is not Slovakia. They're 2 different people. Now, they come from very similar stock, but the difference is, and I'll just throw it out there, the Sudetenland, which was the part German, really, it was Czech Republic was a melding of Germanic and Slovak culture, okay? Slovakia was more pure Slovak. So you have these sort of in-between countries. Czech Republic is literally like the Germanic melding of that between the Slovaks. Macedonia is the melding of Slovak with Greek. So you have like Belgium. It's literally French and German, and they don't have a Belgian language. It's actually Germanic and French. That's what they speak, German and French. So people, that's where you get all there's these little in-between countries. What do you think Austria is? Austria, look at a map. Austria is literally German and Italian.
Mm-hmm.
They're like dark-eyed people that are Italian for all, but they speak a Germanic language. Now, if you look at Trier, it's in Austria. It's actually where the Germans were fighting the Romans for years and years and years. And then, of course, ultimately, one of the emperors becomes a German because the Roman military became more German than Roman. Not to go too far into history, but those are in between countries with in between people. Now, the reason I'm saying this is important because you have essentially the same thing that happens within these alien species. You have grays and you have reptilians, and then you have gray reptilians. What I was telling the people at Costco was that they could look into some of this information, like what Rob was talking about. You could find some of this, like this breeding that went on with the fallen angels, the 200 Watchers. If you subscribe to that, they had children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and those great grandchildren interbred with other incomers, like the reptilian invasion that took place during the wedding of Marduk. That ended up becoming like a big deal. Like this is something you can look up. I mean, there was an influx of these, and there was a war, and there were people beings, not people, being snatched up on both sides, and they were interbred with. And
that's
humans
where the Anunnaki came from.
The Anunnaki, yeah. And so it just kept going and going back and forth, and then it just kept, and then there was this rebreeding going back to the second generation that were still alive because they had long lives, and they were breeding with their great grandchildren, creating another strand of being, which was super powered. I mean, I'm not joking. Like it sounds crazy, but if you go back to the history, that they have this in Japan, it's in China, it's in Siam, they have it in India, they have it in Pakistan, they have records of this stuff. It goes way, way back. It goes back to Malaysia. There's a place in Singapore, a hidden library that you can go and look at. Somebody asked me the other day about Singapore and its significance, besides being a pirate haven that eventually just became its own city-state and defied the laws of everyone around them and just said, you know what? Black sails, like this is ours. We're just going to say this is ours, and we're going to create our own little kingdom. We're going to even all the knowledge of the 7 seas, and we're going to store it in a library, but it's going to be hidden, and you have to have a passcode to get into it. But if you could get into that passcode through a secret society, passcode, you could learn the mysteries of the universe. But that is neither here nor there. That's everywhere. And so literally it depends on how much you want to focus, how much energy, time, and effort you want to put into this. I did watch part of your series, Rob. I've been following you for a while. Now, I think I missed like a few different episodes here, in between, but I caught quite a bit of it. And it was interesting, and it was pretty profound. And I would love for you to come on the show when we move to Rumble, and then we can talk more freely about a lot of this stuff. And the Black Cube Society, which I did a show on earlier today, which was a guy named Justin. I'm upset. Justin, we'll just call him Justin. But Justin, his grandfather was in that. Now, I'm going to tell you something, folks, and you may not understand this. It may blow you away, or you may think I'm full of crap. But there are secret societies. Within those secret societies, there are more secret societies. And believe it or not, those secret societies are even just gateways to the main secret society. Because if that secret society that you're in is not letting you walk through another dimension into another realm, then it's not a real secret society.
Not the one.
It's not exactly. It's not the one. Believe me. So when we're talking, I've interviewed some people. Now, one of my best friends is a Mason. He's not a functioning Mason anymore because once he got to a certain level, he kind of figured it out. And actually, the guy I spoke to earlier today, who this doofus tried to reach out to, he's a former Mason too. And I say former because he doesn't practice or whatever. But these people have all told me. They have all told me that they were asked to go further into this, and they were like, I'm gonna pull back.
The second, 33rd rites of ritual, or whatever it's called, like the 66 where it gets to eventually.
Yeah.
That's
wild. And people don't understand that. And that also is representative of how many different star races there are, like the seeds and all that. I mean, it's like what I call seeds. But when you start going back and you look, one of the things that they're asked to do is basically to obliterate a part of their soul, and give control to a hive mind. Now, when you do that and you take that mark of the beast, which is the preemptive mark, is what I call it, you're literally selling your soul, and you begin to manipulate and harvest people for their own gain, and the little breadcrumbs that they give you, which seems like an awesome lot here on this little, dirt ball. It's like, wow, I got all this power. No, you're still just a pawn, because the ultimate end game is heaven, and that is a realm that they can't touch because it goes beyond the 5th density. Now, I know this sounds like a bunch of hokey pokey new age stuff, but believe me, if you'd spent your nose buried in as many books and talked to as many people as I have, you'd be like, hey, this is what's going on. There's a reason why Chris, Rob, and Truth are here today, because I chose these guys to be a part of this show, and I'd like for them to keep returning, because this is where we're going to get the meat and potatoes of what's going on, the nature of our reality, the cheat codes, if you will, as to why some of these beings can walk through walls, why they abduct you in the physical form, and then other times you turn around and look and your body's still there and they're just taking your spirit. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Why is that? There are a whole lot of questions that need to be answered. And when you're talking about the 66th level and all that, it goes so far in that it's almost like it's impossible to come out once you start to go in there. Now, one of my friends told me when I asked him certain questions, and he did this in front of my wife and my nephews, and we were eating dinner, and he's like, do you have access to the Masonic library? And I shocked him and I said, I don't. But the information is all out there, and if someone chooses to be a layman and just not do it, that's fine. But if you want to go really deep intellectual, you have to find these places where this information is. And believe me, it's scattered throughout the world. They don't make it easy. But if you really want to go, do what I did. I went to Africa. I went to Guatemala. I went to certain places, and I never talk about what I was doing there, and I never will. But I will tell you that I have been there to certain places. I've been to the Orient, I've been to Hong Kong, but there are reasons. And there is a lot to be learned from the Cantonese library in Hong Kong. Has a vast wealth of knowledge and information. You have to hire a translator, but as long as you think that they can get you what you need. And then, of course, the Levant. If you go to Baalbek, you can get people to help you. There are people that will meet you there. Literally, this is a true story, and they will translate literally star guides. And I'm not, it sounds so fantastical, but it is the truth.
That's who they are. And
that's who they are. That's what they are. Yeah.
Right. The one thing I would say is that if you're going to look for these things, the one thing you must have is an open mind, because by the time you come back, your reality is going to be so far off from where it began, from the inception of that trip to the end. Or if you start looking down these holes and really diving into these places, one, you're going to see some really dark things, really dark. But again, the opposite to that would be that there's going to be some revelations of what reality is, how it works, who works it, what is happening to you with the physicality of you integrating this information. That would be one of those things that is so eye-opening. And I would suggest anybody that is able to do that they should do things like that, right? And it's crazy because we talked about information before and how information sometimes is harnessed by certain people and clobbered down like the Smithsonian to where things won't come out. I have very good friends in Australia, Stephen and Evan Strong, and they excavated ancient Aboriginal, and the Aboriginal means the originals, which is what they call themselves, and that's what they believe as a culture. They gave them permission to do archaeological digs of some of their oldest known relatives in Australia at the I forget the name of the rock, but it's a plateau. And it's
what you're talking about.
I forget what it is. We did ceremonies there a couple of times.
Yeah, it's a very sacred place.
Yes.
It's from the dream time. I forgot what it's called.
I can go look. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, but they dug around there, and what they put together was not human. They excavated skulls that were not human. And when they sent some of the pieces of those skulls out, they had them basically, first they tried to get them carbon dated. We know carbon dated doesn't work. Then they tried to look at the chemical makeup of them with some of the rings that they found. and a lot of it came up anomalous. It's Uluru. That's right, Uluru. They're saying it in the chat. Thank you. And the Australian government told them that if they take this skull outside of their house, that they're going to be fined somewhere between $3 to $5 million or spend the next 6 years in jail. And if they keep showing it online to other people, which they do, that they're going to be in even more trouble because they're getting that message out. It's really wild. And I've seen
That's
the
crazy.
court paperwork. So I know that they're not lying about it. You know, I know they're not telling us a tall tale when they say that. But they found these skulls buried in the exact same ceremonial ways as the human remains that were residing by Uluru. And it is like the sacred ground of the Aboriginals, which is crazy.
So let me ask you a question, and we'll start with start with you, Chris James, and then we'll go around this way. So me and Rob have been doing so much talking. But me and Rob got a lot to say, man. That's why eventually when we go to Rumble, Rob's going to lay it out there for us, right, Rob? You're going to lay it out.
Definitely.
So,
Rumble is a great place to vent where you really feel about and what you really think about stuff. Man. Like,
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, Chris, let me ask you this. Somebody posed a question here, D-Truth, and he says, only other civilizations come from beyond the Arctic Wall, in my opinion. What do you think of the Arctic Wall?
Isn't that supposed to be the flat earthers' reason as to why nobody falls off the edge of the planet? And well, last time I looked, I might be mistaken. I'm pretty much convinced that the Earth is round, not flat. But the Antarctic ice wall, that's supposed to be as far as you can go before you fall off the edge of the planet. So,
you don't ever fall off the edge of the planet. What it is, and I've looked into this, and this again, I don't want people to go, "Oh, Josh Turner just said he's a flat earther," blah blah blah. Because every time I say anything, they think that I'm some controlled opposition. I'm a Jewish Nazi, which is another weird thing they've said about me. I mean, I've heard it all. Believe me, it is beyond bizarre. He's a communist capitalist. Okay,
that makes no sense. But
you're all of the bad things of whatever anybody hates. You're that. You're the devil incarnate, and blah blah blah. So here's what I'm going to say. About the ice wall, I do believe that there is an ice wall all the way around. I really do believe that is what Antarctica is. I think it's a huge landmass that goes around the bottom of the Earth. I really believe that. It sounds crazy, but you know, when you stop and you look at the way that they put the map, like the UN, I've always wondered that when I was younger. I remember, you know, they were showing something about the UN on TV, and I asked my dad, I was like, why is it flat like that? But it was round, but it was still flat. Now, whether or not the Earth is a perfect sphere, globe, or ball, to me, doesn't really matter one way or the other. But it does matter in one way, that we could be like bubbles that are kind of bouncing off of each other, and then we're able to interact better at different times, like Halloween. Okay, Truth. So like Halloween, for example, like that is a time or Walpurgis night. Those are times when the veil is thin. Well, I think because we're really close to other, I guess, realms, you know, for lack of a better term. It talks in the Hadith of the Quran, which is really interesting, where it says that the jinn, which is like the demons or whatever, that they have neighbors. And it doesn't really go into what these neighbors are. It's just like the jinn are actually like a buffer between us and something that's a lot stronger, that can hurt us, really. And then there's that. And then beyond that is the angelic realm, which is strange because it's like, it even goes into different levels. Like it goes all the way up to the seventh heaven, which is where God resides for Islam. Whereas my belief is that God resides in an eighth level above the seventh level, which is more in line with the Gnostics. Now, people have said Jesus wasn't from here, which technically would make him an alien. Yeah, I do believe that is sort of the case. I believe that he was, you know, he came from somewhere else. And when he passed on, he hung around to get what needed to be done, and then he left. And no, I don't believe he was controlled opposition. I think he was sent here to pull us out of what's coming. And I don't mean the last couple thousand years of whatever. The 1,000 years to these beings is nothing. When their lifespan at one point was 100,000 years, do you think 1,000 years is that's like 1 year to us? If you're like,
Drop
oh,
in a
okay,
bucket.
that's a year, you know. So that to me tells you right there, 365 years is one divine year. So if Jesus says, I'm going to establish the kingdom of Jerusalem for 1,000 years, he's saying that the rule will last 365,000 years. And this is also backed up in multiple ancient texts, including the Vedas, that is what it is, a divine year. So intergalactically, if you look at these beings, they are going to have a longer lifespan than us. And say what Rob was talking about as them living in space, like in what we consider to be outer space. We really don't know much about it. We think we do because they lie and say, look, that's a picture we took of such and such. Yeah, bull crap. And then, yeah, look, see that ball up there? We've been there. Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, that's a ticket. Whatever. Here's what I say: that these things come. They live in a vacuum of space, so they have artificial gravity, whatever. Yes, and they would have elongated limbs, the shorter legs, kind of squattier at the lower body, and long limbs. That would make sense. Their eyes would be black, and they would appear the way that they appear because they exist in that sort of vacuum. Now, if you stop and you look at their long-lived lives, what Truth was saying about you go 55,000 years into the future, which is a blink of an eye, really, folks. I mean, trust me, just yesterday I was a kid, and I was playing with G.I. Joes, and now I'm wearing the shirt for nostalgia.
Love that shirt.
Because I'm old. Yeah, it's Duke. You know?
Awesome.
So you're sitting up here and you're going like, what happened to time, you know? And time, because time really doesn't exist, but it does because we've made it exist. And so we measure it, right? But it is a completely man-made concept. And when you're out of your body, there is no time, space, whatever. You're moving in and out. You're moving back and forth. And if you were to go far enough back into the timeline, you would actually start to go into another timeline's future. Think of that. That's really weird, right? So it's really, really strange. Like if you just keep, wrapping your head around the infinity, like there has to be a beginning and an end. Somebody had to create something, but who or what started the whole thing, the whole cycle? And to wrap your mind around, oh, well, it's just always been. That could be part and parcel of what we are and why we are. We could have been an experiment. That's just to postulate on a theory. We could have been an experiment, and that doesn't say there isn't a God or a Christ. Christ would definitely have had to come because of that, because another world said, you know what? We're going to make a cruel experiment, and we're going to spin off an entire galaxy or universe to understand the nature of reality and consciousness. And so all of us are here as test subjects, including the aliens that come and go. They're being looked at and tested too, just like everyone else. And for that civilization, 50, 60 years may have passed, and they've been doing this experiment. Whereas for us, it's been billions of years because we are an accelerated system. And they accelerated us so that they could find out the nature of reality and figure out where they come from. So essentially, they were looking for God. They spun us off, and now we are all part of this petri dish of whatever, and they have watched us grow and develop, and the whole thing was one big galactic experiment. Now, that necessarily is not, I'm saying that is the law, but I'm saying that is as good a theory as any, and I've heard it postulated upon. Linda Moulton Howe. I mean, I like Linda. She's a great lady, and she has actually said that before. And I like Linda. She showcased my books, my work, which is cool. But when you go and you listen to what she was talking about, that is as good a theory as any. Also, the inner earth, and why does everyone live inside the earth? Well, it's a lot more comfortable there. The temperatures don't change drastically like where Truth is, where Rob is. You don't get frozen in, or you don't scorch to death like where me and Chris live. We get burned to a crisp every summer, and then the weather decides to just drop below zero last winter and almost kill everybody. That is the extreme. Whereas when you're down in the earth, it's about 67 to 80 degrees, depending on where you're at. Unless you go too far down, then you're in hell. But the core, right? Now that right there to me could be as good a reason as anything of why we're here and what is happening. Now, what is happening to Truth is just part of it. It's collateral damage, right? oh, well, there's going to be some things that are going to happen. Some civilization is going to come and mess with people, and they're going to do stuff. Small price to pay, all the suffering that goes on so we can figure out the nature of reality and the level of consciousness, is understanding. People waking up in class. A guy from England tells me he goes to sleep in college class, right? He's working 2 jobs. He's tired. He falls asleep, whatever. He wakes up, right? And he is in a pod, and he is being shaken and to becoming fully conscious. And then they said, okay, this one woke up. And then they're like, calm down. We're going to put you back under. He looks at himself. He looks at the pod. He sees his reflection. He's a female. He's a really light-skinned white guy with red hair. In this reality, he looks at himself. He's a bronze-skinned female, looks Indian. And then they come and they tell him, okay, you woke up. We're going to put you back under, okay? And he doesn't know what's going on. And then he's back under. He wakes back up. He's in class. What kind of situation was that? Was that a dream? Or was that him waking up to the real reality of what's going on? Or was that a sub-reality that was a spinoff from our reality? And have our people themselves created alternate realities and spun off alternate universes? And was the universe that we were spun off from another universe spun off from, and another one in an infinite search for the truth? We don't know. See, right. That's why we have this show. That's why we go through all this and we talk about all this stuff. Now, Chris, your thoughts on that? I mean, we said the ice wall. What do you think?
If we think too hard about that sort of thing, I think we're all going to crawl under our beds and hide, not knowing for sure what reality is. It can really mess with a person's minds. And unfortunately, the people with all the answers, they're not telling us. As far as these other civilizations from beyond the ice wall, from outer space, there could be millions of different alien civilizations out there. You look at how many stars are up there, infinite universe, infinite number of races. How many of them are here to serve man, like in the Twilight Zone, or how many of them are here to actually help us? We don't know. We can't, who can you trust for the answers? Sure, not the government. Oh, about all we can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other, but also keep our eyes and our ears open. Read a book. Don't listen to the people that have been lying to us for the last several centuries that are saying, oh, but I'm not lying this time. You can't. If a person has proven themselves to be a liar in the past, they're still lying today. So you have to weed out who you're going to listen to, who you're going to pay attention to. Do a little thinking on your own, and someday we might find the answers.
All right.
What do you think, Truth? Your opinion on this?
So I've been working on this theory for a while now. So I don't think the Earth is flat. I don't. But I do think it's bigger than what they are telling us. The reason I think that is, and I do think the ice wall is legit. Now, the reason behind that is, you see what this is? What's this, everybody? This is a golf ball, right? So you see the little divots in the golf ball there, right? I think that's what our planet really looks like, and we are in one of those little divots there, right? And that's what that ice wall is. That ice wall is blocking us in our little divot there from getting out. And say there is you often hear like there's weird. All right, so during one of the eclipses, people were saying that they saw like a barrier up in the sky. So what if that our little section of this giant golf ball is blocked off by an invisible barrier that we can't go through? You know what I mean? That I've been working on that theory.
That's very interesting.
And to speak on the experiment, there's a gentleman named Jerry Wills. They call him the real life real life Indiana Jones. And he went on the show with a man named Kevin Smith back in early-ish 2010s. And he talked about how he went down, I believe it was the Teotihuacan, and there was like a Stargate portal there.
Yeah.
And where you walk up to the Stargate and it has a place for you to put your knees down and you put your head down and you hum these certain tones. And once you hum these certain tones, they told him you hum these tones and you have to focus on what you want to see or where you want to go. So he said, okay, they told him the tones. He walked up there. His wife got on the interview and said she saw this all happen. He got up there, knelt down, started doing the tones, and he wanted to focus on the creator. He wanted to go see who the creator was or what the creator was. So his wife said when he started doing this, his body phased out, like completely disappeared. And he said what he saw was, you remember the movie Stargate? All right, when they walk through the Stargate,
yeah.
you see the stars flying past you and everything. He said he saw that. He saw that exact same type of thing. And he started coming closer to what was like a little dot of white light. And when he got to this dot of white light, he went through what felt like a membrane. So he's standing in this expanse of white and he sees this black construct a little ways away. So he starts walking up towards it and he says it looks like a giant supercomputer. And it's got like nodes and tubes and everything coming off of it, different kind of lights. And he hears this booming voice come from out of nowhere. And he's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I've come to see the creator. And the voice goes on to explain to him that they created our reality so they could justify and see where their place in their reality was. So like they created us, they created our whole deal as an experiment to see where their place in reality and creation was. So it's plus then you said about the soul, about being the guy that was taken, he saw the he fell asleep in class, then he woke up, he was a woman, and then he woke up, went back to sleep, and he was back in class. So I think time is always happening. Time, like the past is always happening, the parallel realities are always happening, everything's happening along the same timeline. So I think because we have souls, right? Our soul is connected to each variation of us on that time, on those, in those different parallels. You get what I'm saying? And that guy, he might have woke up to them seeing a different part of his soul in a different timeline, a different parallel. Does that making any sense, or am I sounding crazy as hell?
No, it does.
No, it sounds completely plausible. It's a soul fragment. One soul is fragmented into a certain amount of pieces over the multiverse. And when he was basically falling asleep, he went into a trance-like state and was able to see through the eyes of another port or another fractal of his soul, of that soul group.
Yeah.
So I think we're living. I think our planet actually, because when what's NASA, NASA, never a straight answer, right? The pictures that NASA puts out from the moon and Earth, they don't correlate. Why are we able to stand on planet Earth and see the moon and it looks giant like that, right? And then they send us pictures from the surface of the moon or whatever they call it, and Earth is like a little nodule like that. Shouldn't that picture be reversed or something like that? It does. None of it makes sense.
It should be
none
huge.
of it makes sense.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense at all. So your thoughts on all this, Rob?
Well, I think that Earth is a closed system, right? There's multiple reasons for Earth right now. And I think that Truth was onto something where the Earth is bigger than they're letting it on to be. And I agree with that. Most people don't realize is that Stargate and Stargate SG-1 is actually the retelling of mission files as opposed to a made-up story. They say art imitates life and life imitates art. There was a complex at Giza where there was a Stargate being held for many, many years. There were many, many wars fought over the ability to use that Stargate, whether it was active or inactive at the time. The potential for it to be used was there. And all the people on this earth, there was 12 tribes that started, and each one had a direct lineage to a specific entity or race that came from somewhere else. And eventually that 12 was broken down into three: the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, and the Mews, right? Or the Muians, however you want to say it. And all three of them went underground because of catastrophe, or to avoid a catastrophic moment within this closed system. When they reemerged, and if we think about Earth as a ball, right, those tunnels will all connect somewhere. It would be a vast network, a honeycomb of sorts, of all these different civilizations living down there. But they talk about these under earth caverns like they're so big that they never end, which means that would place the earth at a much larger density than what we understand it as, right? But those three tribes that were left over that went under earth or inner earth came up once the smoke cleared, or the cataclysm was over or past, which is about 50 years at least. They all came up as one tribe because they had lived amongst each other for so long. This is where we get the convolution of all of these different religions sounding somewhat similar with different takes on them, because of they all come from the same story, and they're all broken into region, and because of that they're given certain little spins or twists on what those people believed, right? Whether it was extraterrestrials, whether it was God, whether it was Yeshua, whether it was Muhammad and the prophets, all that stuff is all relatively similar. And if you notice, even in the Bible, which most people they hate when others say this, it says that we made man in our image.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the we and our, right? If whether you're talking about the Trinity, I don't believe that if God was all powerful, he would refer to himself in the third person. It's just probably it's not really a good look, right? It's not really a good look for anybody. So I don't think that would be what they would be saying. I think that is ancient texts from even further back, potentially a different civilization that is being reincarnated into a new text. Just like we reincarnate, the text reincarnates, and so on, and it will reincarnate again.
And revived and revamped over and over
Right.
again. Yeah.
Down the line again somewhere. Now, the soul fragmentation is because when we come into this plane of existence, we come from a being that is of sixth, seventh, and possibly even fifth dimensional density. To break down to the third density, we have to shed portions of ourself, which will flux into alternate dimensions, timelines, whatever the case. That's how we get to the third density. So because of that fact, that's why we're shedding energy to break ourselves down, to live in this closed system, to experience the physical. You're here because you chose to be here. You're here on purpose, right? Intention is everything. And when we put good intentions out, good intentions come back. It's the same as reincarnation. Now, some people reincarnating are stuck in a cycle. They can't seem to reach that dimensional density that they once were. Therefore, they keep coming back because there are tools and things in which they need to learn to move past that. Now, some people can move past that, but it doesn't happen until they transition.
Mhm.
And when that transition, I'm talking about death, right? Or the shedding of the physical.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that. And when we talk about spirituality, 90% of people who are of the new age and of a spiritual mindset think about your higher self. Your higher self is the essence of that united soul that is still residing in a different dimensional density, but pieces of it have been shed here. And if we tap into a direct connection to our higher self, we're able to see those other dimensions just as if they were our own. Some even say that when we do transition, that we're going to end up and whatever fractal of the soul is still alive across those timelines, and so on and so forth until we collect all those pieces and end up back into our higher self and then be absorbed into source, which could be heaven, it could be God itself, who knows? But that's my belief.
And that is your belief. You have the right to believe that. I don't agree with everything that Rob said 100%, but we don't have to agree. That's the thing. And, you know, as you start to grow, whether it's mentally or spiritually or both, what people don't understand, and I had somebody say this the other day, they said, and I'm not going to mention the person's name, but they said, we need to pray for Josh Turner because we want him back from the way that he was. And what they don't understand is you evolve. And over the time of the years that I've been in this community and doing what I do, whether it's the cryptid, ghost, or the abduction, alien abduction, UFO community, whatever you want to call it, I've grown and I've changed and I've learned because I've studied. I never stopped studying. I never stopped learning. And some people, they get really upset. They don't like it when you say what you just said. They don't like what I say. They don't like what anybody says because it goes against what they've been taught. It's a very narrow view. What I always tell people this when it gets into the religious aspect of it, you're a Protestant, and they'll be like, yeah. And I say this, I say, well, do you realize that what you were learning from is a Catholic creation? They don't like that. And I tell them, I said, even the Reformation did not bring the books of the Bible back. It didn't. All it did was a reformation of the Catholic Church. The Protestant Church became what it was, but there was no return to the way things should have been. And so whenever you start to grow, learn, and change or whatever, things become more clear to you. It opens up an entire world to you, and you start to see that some of the things that you once believed, you have to kind of re-examine them and take a look at them and say, maybe this isn't correct. Like the verse in the Bible where you talk about, Rob, where it says, you know, let us create man in our image. And it is very possible that is the crux of the issue that I have with certain fundamentalists who are after me. They were once my supporters, but then when I began to tell them the truth, they didn't like it, and they call it your truth. Well, there is no your truth or my truth. There's just the truth. And they don't like that you say that this doesn't make sense, that there are some things that need to be looked at. And of course, you know, when you tell them, you point exactly where they need to go and read, then they start finding a million excuses that they read on the internet why not to go and read that, because that will go against their paradigm of their belief. But unless you've read both sides and you've read every angles of this round ball, then, well, you can't really say, you know, do you? And if you're unwilling to even read or accept, you know, then don't argue. Because I have read, and I have read every side of it, and I've looked at it from every angle, and that is why I'm where I'm at. People think that this happens by accident. It doesn't. It takes a lot of learning and a lot of trial and error, and then coming to the conclusion, not to the outside, but just within and with yourself, and having to say, you know what, I was not correct. To thine own self be true. And I think that the real problem is that most people cannot sit back and look at themselves and go inside and be introspective and be like, hey, you know what? I need to take a look at myself, and I need to reevaluate my beliefs and understand that my core beliefs may not be correct. That is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do, is face your own self, because you can tell the world whatever the world you think the world wants to hear. There are people that are chameleons. If they're in one group with one group of people, they're like, yeah. I know this guy over in Germany. That's exactly what he is. He's a chameleon. He's a person that pretends to be whatever it is that group needs to be. That's what he is. He's an absolute. He blends in, and he tells you what he wants. He's one of the people that's been messing with us, and he's been doing it for a long time. And that is literally what they are. They're just chameleons that blend into the surrounding. And they say things and do things to set up whatever the reality narrative is that they want to fit. And he's one of those people, but there is a lot of those people. And so whenever you stop and you look at yourself, that is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I have literally sat there with myself and just looked at myself, not physically looked at myself, but just inside and thought, who am I? Where am I? And where is my place in the cosmos? You know, and what do I need to do to learn, to grow, and to become a better teacher, but also a better learner? Because the best teachers at one time had to learn. And you have so many strong-headed people that are just like, nope, nope, nope. I'm going to believe that this is the world the way it is, and there is nothing you can do to shake that. And they're in for a rude awakening when they do shed the skin. And by the same token, they think that we are, because they think that we're crazy. But, you know, if you were all a bunch of sheep in a slaughter pen, you would think that the shepherds were your friends because they're keeping the wolves off of you. But in reality, that shepherd is fattening you up to take you to the slaughter. Now, there is only, to me, and for my money, only one true shepherd that's capable of leading me, and that's Christ, because I cling to him like driftwood in the ocean. I follow him and the Father of Christ. That's who I follow, and I look to that belief. And it doesn't necessarily go jibe with the Old Testament. I'm sorry, I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it again. There are people who want to believe that the way that they sculpted and crafted the Old Testament to fit the New Testament, but that is not correct.
I agree with that.
Not correct. I'm sorry, it's just not the way it is.
It's crazy too, because I get a little bit of flack too, because I talk about a lot of that stuff, but back at my true core value, I still believe in Jesus and Christ and God. And that's, you know, it's sort of like conflicting in certain areas, but by my understanding, God has created this system. So this system is sort of my understanding. Now, I always like to debate people and say there's a difference between church and faith, right? Church is corrupted because man runs church. Faith is not, because God is immutable and God gives you your faith. Now, how you see everything from that point is on you. But there was a long time in my life where I don't want to say I strayed away from God. I was looking for other sources, but everything led back to intelligent design, which gives me the inkling that God was the one who created it. And what would it be if aliens came down on Main Street, USA right now, and they told you that they believed in God, the same God you believed in, just by a different understanding or name, because their tongue might be foreign? How would that make people feel? And let's say, like you said before, they were the ones that created us in their image, and they're created in God's image. Does that still make us children of God? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because the same blueprint was used. And that's the divine blueprint, which we all carry. Crazy, right?
Truth said something. He says he's talking to Werewolf, which is Werewolf 5674. Just read it, heard, not true. Just read it, head, not true. Okay. So anyway, Truth says because Jesus always sat at the right hand of God. Well, here's what I say. A lot of people want to believe that we were created as a copy of God. Now, it was a copy of something God-like, or something that would be akin to a God to us, no matter what, no matter how you look at it. But do you really believe that the infinite creator of the universe, the one true God, the one that I believe is beyond the eighth heaven, the one who Christ refers to multiple times, and he argues with the Pharisees, who are arguing that they are worshiping the one true God. But Jesus tells them, no, you're not. You're worshiping Shaitan, which is Satan. And he is the God of this world. And he is the one that created this fantasy that you're living in. Jesus tells them that. So when you're following this part of the Old Testament, it gets kind of convoluted. And there's a lot of copying, pasting, and redacting to make it fit. And the priesthood had control. So when Jesus tells them, if you are not following my Father, you're following your father, who is Shaitan. He's following the Father that is all that is and all that was and all that ever will be. This infinite God, the creator, the love, the one that has all this love for all of us, It doesn't follow the same narrative of the jealous, angry God, the smiteful God who tells you to go out and then wants blood sacrifice. And even in some of the canon of the Jewish faith, Yahweh is described as a dragon. So how does that turn your head on its ear? Because I didn't want to say all that because some of the audience is so fundamentalist Christian, and I'm sorry to tell you that, but in the Jewish canon, that is true. Yahweh is described by David, who actually saw him, but in our Bible, it doesn't show that nobody has seen him. Only Moses saw him as a man from the backside. But Yahweh is described as a dragon, and I can prove it to you that it says that. Now, you are reading from a Bible that was rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten 1,000 times rewritten, and then it was also rewritten from the Hebrew canon, which was also rewritten from the Persian canon, which was rewritten from it goes all the way back to the Babylonians and the Assyrians, and then the Mesopotamians, and then the Sumerians.
16
So how
times.
are you going to sit up here and argue that that book was passed down to down to down to down to down to down, that is the absolute word?
Don't they say the
New
Ethiopian
Testament is a lot
Bible is the
easier to
most
understand
accurate?
because it was pretty cut and dry. The Ethiopian Bible is actually because it has all of the different books in it still. So if you were going to look for one that's the closest, but even that is still just passed down information.
Yeah.
I would say this. I mean, if you want to really learn and you want to know, you have to look at all the information. You have to look at all the information and then look at the time that when this was written. That is very important. If somebody goes and writes something 600 years after their captivity, and they had already been in captivity another 600 years, and so they're writing 1,200 years and then another 200 or 300 before that. So you're going back 1,500 years, and they're going to write about something. We're today, if we were living in a Stone Age era and we were going to write from word of mouth 1,500 years ago, you better believe that most of what's going to be written is just someone's ideas, someone's fictional reality that sounds good to them, and it'll make their people look good and make them look like the boss, So yeah, let's write some stuff that makes us look like we were in charge and we're the chosen, and everybody's the chosen. Everybody wants to be the chosen. And so, yeah, you're going to do that. But it so happens that the Messiah came from that lineage, right? But that doesn't mean that their word from the Old Testament is the absolute word. That does not mean that. And Jesus challenges that because when he goes away for 18 years and he returns, he's very defiant. One of the first things he did was walk into the money-changing temple with a whip. And he went ballistic on these people. And he said, your father is not my father. Your father is Shaitan. He figured it out in his physical form. He was like, you know what? I have a higher purpose. I have a destiny, and it is to be the Son of God. And when he was younger, he was like, he had an ability, but it wasn't like his calling. It wasn't like he was doing what he had to do. And of course, they always cling to this, where he said that I came to not take away, but to add to whatever. Yes, but then he leaves. Now, people do not look at timelines at all. They just take little bits and pieces of what they want because some half-assed preacher, and I'm going to say this, it's going to sound harsh, told you years ago because they needed to come up with a sermon on a Sunday. I've challenged many preachers in my life, and they could not answer the hard questions for me. So organized religion, once they don't have a 401c, then you come back and talk to me. Okay? Because that right there, the government looks at that and says, you're teaching the Christianity the way we want you to teach it. Good boy. And we're going to let you have a tax break. Oh, wait, whoa. Now you're saying something against these people that nope, taking it away. Once you fall back in line and start teaching to the sheep again, then we'll give you back your tax-exempt status. Do you understand that that's what they do? Apparently, people do not grasp that, and that is something that people have a serious hard time with. And I had somebody recently really snarkily said that, well, you're teaching of the Gnostics and you're teaching of the Anunnaki and you're teaching of this and that. It's going to be the undoing of you. No, it's going to be the development of a new audience that wants to learn. And we're going to shed away those and they're going to fall away, those that don't want to go further into the subject. Those that just want to hear about somebody seeing a dogman or a Bigfoot, we're going to talk about that.
It's
but
all
do you
connected.
want to know what that is, or you just want to hear the scary stuff? Because if you really want to know what you're dealing with, let's talk about Teotihuacan for a second here. Okay, so Teotihuacan, you mentioned that earlier, Truth. Teotihuacan was actually a city that predated the Aztecs anywhere from 700 to 800 years. And when the Aztecs arrived in that region, they were scared of it. They said it was built by the gods, and that the inhabitants of it, they made up stories about the inhabitants of it still being there, being ghosts. They have archaeologically found 5 different races of beings that were at that site of mankind, actually. Many, many different types, and Mayans in particular. And then they even found artifacts that were only found in one other place on Earth, India. Very weird. They found things that they debate whether or not they could have been Egyptian, but we don't really know. And of course, if there is a Stargate below somewhere, it would be in Teotihuacan, because the Aztecs, there was a particular Spanish priest who had a nephew who came over from Spain after the conquest, and he wrote extensively about the exploration of these major cities that were surrounded Tenochtitlan, which is the capital of the Aztecs, which became Mexico City, or Mexica was what it was called. So whenever he talks about the exploration of Teotihuacan, it was a foreboding place. The Aztecs themselves, the Indians, they were scared of it. And he said that a lot of times the expeditions that were sent there to map it out, to find out what was there, they never came back. Now, that's very interesting. So it speaks to the truth of what you, Truth, it's funny, it speaks to the truth of what Truth said about Teotihuacan being a possible location for a Stargate. Another place where there is a Stargate, and we all know, is Baghdad in Iraq. And why the military was in such a damn hurry to get to the libraries and to get to the museums. Wow.
The museum was one of the first things they took down when they got there. And they went there, they ransacked all the ancient artifacts in there, and I believe they started destroying some of it also, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole point was to, and then they burned the libraries, too. The whole point was because those libraries had forbidden knowledge, information that was sitting in plain sight. And then of course, the museums, they had to be destroyed because they had certain things that they wanted and that they needed. And I mean, I think they're in contact with beings that are beyond our understanding. When you stop and you look at all of this information and you look at all of this forbidden knowledge, even today, when we talk about it, as we speak right now, as we talk about this, there are those that are hating me, and they're turning away and jumping off the chat because they are not ready. They don't want to hear this. They're like, la, 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 because you're telling them what the truth is. Now, a lot of it is hard to digest. It is. It's very hard to take. And if you haven't been, we try to make it more palatable, but the truth is going to set you free, but first it's going to piss you off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
An old saying, and one of my colleagues, Tony Merkel, says that all the time. But that's the truth. I mean, that's an old saying, man, and it's going to piss you off. My dad.
I thought he made that up. I've been listening to Tony for years now, and I keep hearing him.
No, that's an old saying, man.
Okay. Here's a deep thought for everybody.
He might have come to the same conclusion on his own, but my dad used to tell me that all the time, because he would tell me the truth doesn't need to defend itself, and he would say things like, the truth is going to set you free, but first it's going to make you mad.
A deep thought for everybody that's following this so far. How has the world changed since all those museums and such in the Middle East were ransacked? What major things can we see right now that are different from before that war?
Psychopathy. I think that they didn't just destroy it to destroy it. There's 2 Stargates within the Middle East, probably more.
Oh, but I know one's in Ur.
Right. Well, there's one in Giza, which was one that was set to a certain system. And the Earth has chakras just like we have chakras, right? So there's certain points where energy is very high on the planet. Giza and Baghdad are two of those chakras. Now, the crazy part is the Giza Stargate had a separate system than the Baghdad Stargate. Now, when they started to go for control over the Baghdad Stargate, they either opened it and left it open for a long period of time, or they destroyed it. Now, I can't tell you which one is the higher echelon benevolent or bad entities and where they come from. They probably use both.
Mhm.
But when they knocked out one, the others stayed open. And when they knocked out that one in Baghdad, the other one in Giza was able to be accessed by both sides. Instead of it being one and one, like one was coming from, like the bad was coming from one, and they were able to stave off and block that one enough so only the good people could come in, or vice versa, whatever the case is. But when they took down that second Stargate in Baghdad, all travel was redirected towards Giza, and Giza is a center point for essentially civilization. It's like the center of everything. So from that point, these entities that were good and bad were both able to come out and spread further. Now, what they did was they also had governments helping them to create these programs which got people off of their ability to discern, to be cognitive thinkers, to not be sheeple, really, right? And now we see so many sheeple taking into these mainstream media outlets for their information and their consumption of info, that they've been morally corrupted, not just physically corrupted. They've been morally corrupted. They've been emotionally corrupted. And a lot of that has to do with that breaking of one of those stargates. Because think about it. We talked about balance all night long, right? No matter what we said here, there's still a balance to everything, yin and a yang. So if we destroy one of these stargates at one of the Earth chakras, it throws the entire planet off balance. There isn't an ebb and a flow. There's only a flow, right? And it's building, and it's going to build to a crescendo where the cup runneth over eventually. And you're going to see that there were certain people here to stave off that overflow, but there's also a lot more of the negative here now that's essentially trying to grasp for that control, because that balance was there for so long. A lot of the things that we've decided to try and stave off have actually been effective, and we've actually gained the upper hand. But now that things are starting to, that's somebody said CERN too. That could be one of the reasons why they turned CERN on, was to create an alternate portal for things to come in through, right? There's a lot of dimensionals and a lot of different dimensions out there where they could essentially grab certain entities that they see to be a benefit to them. Meanwhile, they don't really know what they're playing with when they do these things. They think it's science, or they think it's some sort of thrill to be a part of it, not knowing what they're unleashing onto the entirety of the planet. And that's also part of the problem, because they're also probably taking direction from somebody who's not so good. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. And then they make these treaties that we could talk about with Eisenhower and the Greys themselves. That's how we get to these points. And it's inflection points, and we have to start working towards the balance again, because that balance will keep us in a place where we're all safe, really.
So to answer a question in chat real quick, Mark Biso, did they try to find Nimrod's tomb? If I am not mistaken, in a certain former Secretary of State's emails, that was leaked that they did find that tomb. If I'm not mistaken. So it's out there on the internet. You can go out there and find that information. It's in a series of emails, apparently, from a former female Secretary of State. I'm not going to say the name on air because I don't want Wolf getting flagged for political stuff.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. Folks, do you guys need to go? Does anybody need to run? We're at the 2 hour
I do.
mark.
I got to run out for a little while. But
so we'll drop you, Rob. Do you need to go, Chris? What do you got to do?
It's past my bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Truth?
Yeah, I ain't got nothing to do except some PlayStation 5.
Okay, good. So you can hang out. So you guys, Rob, thanks for coming on. Hopefully you'll be back next week. We can do it again.
I definitely will be.
Let me know. Yeah. Okay. I'll let you go.
All right, dude. Much love to everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and eventually we can get out more of what we need to say, and going to Rumble will be a big boon for us to be able to say what we have to say.
I can't wait, bro.
Yeah, because trying to talk about this, we have to get through all of the religious stuff first so that people will understand how it correlates. And I'm going to get into that in a minute with some people here. So I'm going to let you run.
Thank you, guys.
All right, bye. Bye, Chris. I'll see you next week.
All righty. See y'all later. Y'all have a good night.
You too.
Take it easy.
So here's what we got, Truth. So what we're talking about here, and we got about 390 people in the chat. So, I'm going to read this to you. And this is something that people need to understand now. There was somebody that said that Yahweh being depicted as a dragon is just them saying that that's his anger or whatever. No, there's actually a description that was given by David that talks about Yahweh, and he is actually a dragon, a real reptilian dragon being. Now, it says here, and of course I got this off of Reddit, but the guy does lay it out pretty succinctly here, and I'm going to read this to you, and you can tell me what you think of this, and if y'all want to tar and feather me. But it says here, 2 gods in the Bible, Yahweh the dragon and the true God. And it says here, a verse that makes this very clear is Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided to the nations the inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. This makes it very clear that the Lord and the Most High are separate beings. I believe Jesus, this is somebody saying this, they say, I believe Jesus was sent from the real God, whatever you want to refer to him as, the Most High. And I can't understand the monad, etc. When looking at Yahweh, Yahweh is an evil entity who commits a bunch of evil acts in the Old Testament, like genocide, pedophilia, and literally stoning people to death for not worshiping him. Here's some that are not taken out of context. Hosea 13:16. It says, Samaria shall become desolate, for she hath rebelled against her God. They shall fall by the sword. Their infants shall be dashed in pieces, and their women with children shall be ripped open or ripped up. Samuel 15:3. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Isaiah 13:17-18. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. Numbers 31:17-18. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Now, he says, could this really be the same God that Jesus talked about? The way the Lord is described in the Bible, Isaiah 7:18, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall hiss for the fly that is in the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria, hiss like a snake, ? This verse comes to mind for me, Luke 10:19. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Very interesting description of Yahweh. Psalm 18:6-10:6. In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. Then the earth shook and terror trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils and fire out of his mouth. Devoured coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode up a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind, literally sounds and descriptions of a dragon. Finally, this verse where Jesus is talking to the descendants of Abraham. Pay most attention to John 8:44. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus saith unto them, if ye were Abraham's children, we would do the works of Abraham. But now ye seek to kill me, a man that hath told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. Ye do the deeds of your father. Then said they to him, we be not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came of myself, but he who sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech, even because ye cannot hear my word? You're of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let he who hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. When looking at the Star of David, you get 6 points, many triangles, and six-sided polygon like 666. Revelation 2:9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and they are not, but they are the synagogue of Satan. And he says, I find these interesting connections in gematria, the ancient practice of turning letters into numbers from the Kabbalah, which is a Jewish text. English Samaria, the time cube, 666, God of Israel, 666, biblical Hebrew, 666, the Archon, 666. Wanted to say that on Rumble, but people want to say, and so it is food for thought. Take it in for what you want to take it and do what you will with it. Truth is the truth. Like they said, it will set you free. And no offense to Tony Merkel, that is an old saying. He may have come to that conclusion on his own. Tony's a pretty honest guy. I like Tony. He was at my first conference. Truth, you probably met him there.
Yep.
And so, but my father used to say that. My dad used to say, the truth will set you free, but it'll piss you off first. And actually, as a preacher, he used to say that it'll make you angry. So I don't know if Tony got that from them or if Tony, said it himself or whatever. But somebody's going to run to him and try to stir something up, I'm sure. But Tony, if you're listening, it's no knock on you. You're a smart guy, man, smart kid. So the truth says here, it's easier to fool than to convince them that they've been fooled. Mark Twain, that's exactly right. What we have, though, and what I'm trying to tell you is the reason that we can't move forward is because so much of the audience is programmed to believe that there has to be a certain way that God is. That is the crux of one of the arguments of one of my detractors he continues to hammer at. Although I'm going to tell y'all, folks, that's not his full reasoning. He's got a bunch of other reasons, and he's used a bunch of different reasons why he despises me. But the bottom line is this. I tell the truth the way I know it to be. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie to you. And so reading that right there, I found that weeks ago that somebody had posted that, and it was very succinct, like put into, they put it very well. And so, having that shows you that there is something to that. I know everyone wants to believe that the God of Israel is their God, but even when Jesus argues against it, and they still don't want to believe, and they cling to the Old Testament, which was stitched together and then stitched into the New Testament, and they say this is the Word of God, but the Bible, and like Rabbi John said when I was on the show with Tex the other night, he said it. He said that the Bible is not the one book. It's a bunch of books that have been thrown together. And even in the Jewish canon, the Old Testament, he said himself that it doesn't run together smoothly. They smoothed it out by the Council of Nicaea. They smoothed it out and made it into one functioning timeline, which were literally a bunch of paid scribes that were paid by the Illuminati. I tell you, copied and pasted, yeah. That's what they did. And it comes from a lineage. These were the same people that killed Caesar. I'm not kidding, man, literally. And Augustus stamped them out, and you know where they went? They went to Egypt. You know what they became? I'm going to tell you what they became. The Temple of Set, the cult of Set. The cult of Set actually was the worship of the serpent. That's what it was. It was the worship of the deceiver. That's what it was. And the Yahweh that people believe or whatever, our DNA has his stamp on us, right? But if you look at Yahweh being called a dragon and a serpent and whatever over and over again, a lot of people believe that we were seeded and created by reptilian overlords to be whatever. But what they were Anunnaki were a mixture of reptilian and humans, but they were giants. And they could withstand the temperature changes, whereas the draconians, the reptilians, could not, being cold-blooded. And so they created a hybrid race that could, and then that hybrid race fought against them, and they fled, and they became another. They were of a slave race and of a master race of the Draconian. They fled through these stargates. I believe this is what happened. It's a very plausible theory, right? And then they end up here, and they set up shop, and they become a powerful civilization. But the reptilians find them, and they reinvade and they reattack and whatever. And what is God is very convoluted. That's why I say I cling to Christ and his definition of God. But he disavows a lot of what's said in the Old Testament. I don't care if you believe it or not. If you go back and you read these texts, you will see what I'm talking about. And if you look at the Bible the way you're supposed to look at it, and not by the way that they've turned it and tried to make it into a big, long fairy tale, these are a bunch of books that were thrown together. Now, me and Truth are pretty smart guys. If you gave us bits and pieces of the Lord of the Rings and told us to fill in the blanks, we could probably come up with an epic fairy tale to feed you and tell you that that was the history of the world. And then
very, very easily too.
Yeah, years from now, there would be a worship of Gandalf. Gandalf would be some prophet like Abraham or something, and eventually it would just become what it is. And then you would have people who would live and die by those words. There are even movies where they talk about this, like Planet of the Apes, one with Mark Wahlberg, where what was it, that name that they kept calling Seamus or whatever they were worshiping, and it was really just the name of that company that sent them out into space or whatever. The one that Tim Burton made, and the one gorilla guy, he was really like bow your heads, and they would worship this god because he believed that was God, because that was the name that was on the shuttle or whatever. Seamos or whatever. It was something like that. You got to look outside the box. And I'm not telling anyone to not believe that there is a true one, all-powerful God. There is. And Christ was his son and his emissary and the word made flesh. Absolutely. 100%. But is that God taking pity on us, a slave race of beings, and he sent Christ? Or is it this, what the Old Testament says, which sounds kind of like, when you have to really, really like dilute yourself to totally believe in that, or be indoctrinated in it from birth and be an absolute fundamentalist, like the guy that's after me. You got to be like him. I mean, and I think, honestly, folks, I don't think he cares one way or the other. I think he's using that for, just for, Star of David is a Star of Remfan Bale Malak. Yes.
So D Truth says there has been a great reset. The oldest cemetery was Crete's in the 1600s. Where are all the rest of the dead? There's been a few resets. Now, if you subscribe to the whole Tartarian civilization and the mud flood and everything like that, there shows proof that there was actually some kind of mud flood that happened in recent history, and a lot of this stuff is buried, and they're starting to dig stuff up. Like, I just came across a video the other day. I forgot exactly what country it was, but this gentleman was out in he's trying to dig a pool in his backyard. And
I saw that.
And he finds a whole like civilization set up down underneath his house. So it's like that. The information's out there. You just got to go look for it, and be willing to have your paradigm shifted. If that's the
only thing about the mud flood, I believe that's real, but I don't believe it was just 100, 200 years ago. I don't believe that. I believe it was a long, long time ago, and I believe that it was remnants of an older civilization that was washed over. But in Tartaria, in the map, the reason that they called it Tartaria is because it was like Comancheria. At one time, if you look at I have an old Texas map, and then they just most of Texas, a little bit of southern Oklahoma, and most of northern Mexico was just called Comancheria. And that just basically was saying, don't go there. That's the land of the Comanches. The map where it says Tartaria beyond Moscow is just that's the land of the Tartars. They didn't own that land because they didn't own land, but they were just a warlike tribe that existed there, and they could show up anywhere. There's an area below that where it just says Cossack, which is like, that's the land of the Cossacks. They were just warlike tribes, and eventually the Cossacks destroyed the Tartars. The Tartars converted to Islam under Tamerlane, and the Cossacks ultimately wiped them out and destroyed them because they would destroy anything that wasn't Christian. But there again, they did things, you know, they were like, well, you're not a Christian, but they did things in a brutal and terrifying way. And they were very warlike, and I know a lot about them because that's my dad's mother's people. And so the Cossacks have a lot of bloody history. They attacked the Poles relentlessly. They attacked the Russians or the Rus relentlessly. They raided all the way up into northern Russia. They were pretty violent and aggressive people. And then they went down into the south and they sacked Istanbul. And it's the only time Istanbul had ever been taken by a Christian army, and it was the Cossacks. They raided on the Black Sea as pirates because the one thing that they loved more than riding in their boats and raiding like Vikings, which is really what they were. They're just Viking descended people, was riding on their horses and attacking on horseback. And they are a loose mishmash of basically of Germanic blood and Viking blood. That's what they are. And they really don't have much Slovak blood in them. Maybe now after communism, because they were forced to assimilate and marry. So the ones now are a little bit smaller people, and they literally, communism changed their genetic makeup. But I have the Cossack blood pre-communism, and they are very big people, very powerful people, very warlike people. Their closest genetic relatives existed in Norway and Finland, and then they're kind of an anomaly in that region, just as the Tartars were kind of an anomaly too. They had Mongol and they had Laplander and Rus blood in them, and that's what the Tartars basically were. But they eventually, in the south in particular, they succumbed to Islam during the invasions, and of course they became part of Tamerlane's army, and a lot of them were wiped out in the wars of conquest. And they fought as mercenaries with the Moguls, and there again they fought and were destroyed by a bunch of them were destroyed by the Mongols. And then they traveled further west where they encountered the Cossacks, and they fought for the land of the Caucasus region, ultimately being wiped out by the Cossacks almost to a man, to where that they no longer exist as a people. The Cossacks genocided them in the end. But they were very warlike, and they liked to go into other people's territory. And so the maps, they would say Tartaria because they didn't have it mapped out. Hell, who the hell was going into Siberia and mapping out Kamchatka or the Taiga? Nobody was going to go into the Taiga and Kamchatka. Hell, there were people seeing woolly mammoths until the 1700s, 1800s there in that region. I mean, shit, nobody was going in there. Their god bear exists there. The last encounters with the god bear came from a German division. I believe it was SS Viking in the north that helped Finland invade from the north with Army Group A. And there were reports that were Soviet-released documents of the god bear attacking a Soviet division while they were engaged with the German division. So it was a really interesting report. I came across it years ago, and I read that, and it was nothing redacted. They don't redact a whole lot on those reports because those were given during Perestroika. The order was given to release those, and Putin has actually kept his word and allowed those to be released year after year after year. Because what does he care? I mean, it's a lot of weird stuff in those reports.
There's a lot of
bombing of Dresden.
A lot of good reports come out. I know people get rushed, but they are very open about some of the subject matter that they put out, like in regards to like UFOs, aliens, technology, and stuff like that. Like, I'm pretty sure. Did you hear about the one instance where the beings landed and they turned the group of soldiers into stone? I believe it was. This happened in like the 80s. That was out.
No.
Group, if I'm remembering it right, a craft had landed. A group of beings got out of the craft. They were approached by military soldiers, and they turned the soldiers into stone.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Zarachina? Do you know about Zarachina? The Bulgarian, they call it the Bulgarian Roswell, where they found Adam. I wanted to talk about it before Rob and Chris got off, but we can talk about that next week if you want to come back. Zarachina is very interesting. I'll send you some information on it. You can do some research on it. It's very interesting. There's also
You
a
said the
video that you can look up about Yahweh
Beelzebub.
being the dragon, which is interesting too. The guy lays it out there very, very clearly. And I can send you a link to that too. I've corresponded with a few of these researchers too that have gone over, and there was a remote viewer that I talked to who remote viewed the Zarachina thing, and very interesting what they had to say about it. Now, I don't always put a lot of stock into that, but I mean, I try to look at things from all angles, folks. I look at all the angles of the ball. I know that sounds weird, but that's the truth. You got to look at it from every angle, man. You can't just,
Like I said, the last time I was on the show, you have to look at it as like a 1,000-piece puzzle. And if you're not looking at it as a 1,000-piece puzzle, you have to take everything and put it all together, because if you don't have, you might be missing. Like if you're looking at the paranormal, you might something from like the UFO field might correlate in the paranormal field. Something from the Bigfoot field might correlate in here. Like it's all connected and intertwined, and if you don't take a step back and look at it as a 1,000-piece puzzle that you have to put together and look at everything, you're never going to get the information you want.
Yeah. And I think because, you and me, I've invited a lot of people to your group, an Impromptu Truth on Facebook. Folks, if you haven't subscribed to Truth, go and subscribe to his channel. Tell him your channel. We can put the link up there.
The name of the channel is pretty simple. It's an Impromptu Truth. Yeah, because the reason I call it that is because listen, there's no narrative for the truth. The truth is going to be unscripted. You can't write that. You know what I mean? When it comes to you, it's shocking. That's why I named it that. And we try to get people on who really haven't had their stories told, because I try to use it as a platform for people to come out and tell their truth, tell what they've experienced without the judgment, without the hee-haw of everything, all the other crap that goes on like that. Just me, you, my brother, and we'll sit down, we'll listen to your story, and we'll ask you a few questions. And probably after that, we'll probably talk about wrestling or something after the interview. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing what we do. It's nobody, that can say 100% that they're absolutely correct, but we try to get to the bottom of it. And there's a lot of information out there that needs to be exposed, that needs to be talked about. And people, they come at me from all angles. I get it from the atheists for being a Christian and being open about it. I get attacked from Christians. I get attacked from agnostic researchers. I get attacked from everybody. And I'm getting hit hard by the fundamentalist Christians who absolutely do not like me to talk about anything other than their version of the Bible. And what their version of the Bible, it seems to be, even when I use that version of the Bible to disprove what they're saying, then they just become angry and it turns into ad hominem, it's par for the course. And I'm used to being attacked. I've been under attack since this show's inception, which has made me stand stronger and just kept pushing harder, because I know that this information is important, or I wouldn't get such a backlash. I've gotten people coming to me every day telling me they're being unsubscribed to my channel. These people are not just making that up. Why would they bother to email us and tell us? Me and Anthony and Tony are getting emails every day. Every day. I mean, every day. When I say every day, that means yesterday, today, tomorrow. And they're always telling us the same thing. Every time I come to your channel, I have to resubscribe. I wake up and we're like almost to 34,900 by the end of the day. There's 30 less people. And then there's 30 more people, and then there's 30 less people, and they just keep doing this back and forth thing. And there's other channels that have been saying that too. And so the natural move is to do something, because you can't just sit back and get jacked around, and so I don't know who's doing it or what's doing it, or if somebody's hacked or whatever. I'm not going to point fingers. I don't know. I can't say, but I know that we're doing the best we can here at Paranormal Roundtable.
Listen,
and,
if you're not ruffling feathers and you're not offending people, you're not standing for something. You're not speaking truth. Like the truth is always going to offend somebody, because it's just not part of their makeup to hear it. You know what I mean? So you're always going to get backlash from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Media Palace says Zarachina is super interesting. It was a Bulgarian black ops called Operation Silver Streak. I think similar here in Texas. If you want to jump on, you can, man. That's Eric.
When we get off of here, I'm gonna look that up because I haven't heard about that. I've heard about a lot of UFO crashes, but I haven't heard anything about that one.
Oh yeah, Zarachina is. Yeah, I mean. Yep.
Now, when did that happen? Because in the 80s, that's when the late 80s or so, that's when the Belgian UFO flap was happening. Was it around that time?
Yeah.
Where they were
This was in Bulgaria. The UFO flap in Are you talking about Belgian? The Belgian UFO flap? Yeah.
So the other this was in Bulgaria. Okay.
Yeah, this was in Bulgaria, but there have been a UFO flaps in just about every country in Europe at some point or another. I think what they were doing though, and if you look at let's go into the UFO thing for a minute here. If you stop, thank you, Donnie Cho, for that donation. Crazy kid, Donnie. So when you look at like the flaps, you'll see like there was a flap in Spain, then in France, then in Belgium, then in Germany, like in Luxembourg, and then they went to Saxony, and there were all these different, and then it just kept moving around. I think they were preparing for CERN. I mean, that's my opinion, because why would you see so many? And then there were all these UFOs that were around the Kremlin, and there was something going on over their airspace. And in 1987, they thought that they were being attacked. I mean, you can look this stuff up. I mean, and so the Kremlin, like, they scrambled fighter jets and they were shot down, and they began to saber rattle the United States. And of course, Reagan was the president at that time, and he was like, it's not us. We're not doing this, but don't threaten us, And he eventually bankrupted the Soviet Union because of all but part of the stockpile of their weaponry was that they were preparing not for an invasion from the United States, because they knew the United States wasn't going to attack them. They really believed that the next war was going to be an interstellar war. And Reagan even said that in one of his speeches, that the next war would be fought in space. Like, I mean, these people, they suppress a lot of this knowledge, but if you just dig a little, you can scratch into the surface. Just dig a little, and it'll just come out. Like Zarachina.
Anybody familiar with Admiral Richard Byrd and his story about Antarctica? He said that the next world war would be fought against craft that could go traverse from pole to pole within a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you stop and you look at all of this that's gone on. And where we're at right now and where we're headed. And then you stop and you look at what has happened and how CERN and then has done what it's done, and take a look at like what's gone on with the Mandela effect. Obviously, there's something there. There's something going on that we can't comprehend. And I think that people are just being willfully ignorant, and they say, oh, it's just people misremembering and this and that. No, dude, I think it's very simple. I think that the answer is right there in our face, and it's just they have tampered with things, they have messed with things, and there is something that we cannot comprehend. As far as our timeline goes, we don't know what they've done or what they haven't done. All we know is that things change on a daily basis. You'll go and you'll look at something one day, and you'll be like, that looks different than it did yesterday. And I'm not even joking. My wife has a vehicle. And I was looking at it the other day, and I was like, and I could have swore like just the day before it had a different design. And there was like this kind of a indentation on the panels that kind of went in. And I have a pretty good memory, and I'm like, that wasn't there yesterday. And people are going to think I'm crazy. But this stuff happened like right after the eclipse. I noticed a few little changes to different subtleties, things. And I'm like, that's not correct. I put on a shirt the other day that I know I've worn that shirt, and I looked at it. And I said that the picture on it had gotten smaller. The shirt, I put it on, the shirt fit the same, but the picture was not a full-on picture. It was kind of cut and kind of squared off. And I was like, what the hell? The day after the eclipse. And so I wasn't even looking for that. I was trying to keep that out of my mind so that I wouldn't be looking. I did it anyway. But, and I noticed it. I said, dude, there are some things that changed. I don't care what anybody says. Every time they fire that son of a gun up, some crap happens. And I believe that in these UFO flaps too that were going on were in preparation for that. And I believe that they were dealing with, whatever, keeping interlopers out. of the airspace of those countries so that they could link them up. I believe that was a big part of it. And I do believe that these bases come from the inner earth too. There's a lot of them in the inner earth. That's where they come from. What are your thoughts on the inner earth, Truth? What do you think about that?
I do believe I do believe that there is an expanse beneath our feet, that there's something there's something down there, because there's been numerous times where people have seen like water, dry lake beds, water coming up out of dry lake beds and stuff like that. Like, where's this water coming from? This lake bed's been barren for hundreds of years or something like that. Now, I do believe that there is creatures that are coming up out of the inner earth. One of them being the pale crawler / rake. I believe that's one of them. That's why it looks all gangly and pale like that, because of there's no sunlight down there, and they have to get, their body has to be super stretchy or whatever you want to call it to fit through those caverns and passageways and everything like that. But I do believe there is another civilization-ish underneath our feet, and that's where a lot of these UFOs might be coming from. Because how many times have we heard about UFOs coming up out of the oceans and everything like that? We know more about outer space than we do about our own oceans. You know what I mean? What would be the most terrifying thing? People, think about it. If aliens came down, landed, they went under the ocean there for a couple of days and just left, never said anything to anybody on the surface. Wouldn't you find that terrifying? Like, who the hell did you guys go to just see underneath the ocean? Why were you underneath there for a few days?
Yeah. Donnie Cho, thank you for that donation. He says, every time I get stressed about CERN, I look to our better selves towards hell divers too.
Hell divers for democracy. I love that game.
Messed up. Again, somebody made a comment here earlier. I wanted to kind of address that. They said the Scythian leeches. Well, okay. I wanted to get into that. I can do an entire show on that, and I can tell you about the Scythians. The Scythians, SCY. Somebody made a comment earlier in the chat about it. I just saw it on there.
Yeah, when they wrote it down, when they said it, I wrote it down. Like, I've never heard of that, so I wrote it down. I always write down stuff I've never heard of.
Yeah, somebody, whoever said that, repost your comment because I can't find it now. But the Scythians were a people that hailed from a part of Iran, and I don't know 100%. I think it's like southern Iran where they came from, and they were literally a people that founded a partial empire, and they were defeated by Alexander the Great. They were a part of King Darius III's empire, and they were of Persian stock, but they had their own autonomy. And I believe that's where the hero Rostam came from. It was a vassal state, but the Scythians bailed out on the Persians as Alexander got closer, and they migrated. And they went across the Black Sea, and they ended up in the Crimea, which is an interesting thing, because the Crimea, there were wars fought over the Crimea between the Greeks and the Turks, between the Russians and the Turks, between the British and the Russians, and everybody. It changed hands back and forth, ultimately becoming part of Ukraine, and part of the Crimea was controlled by the Cossacks, my grandmother's people. And eventually they made a deal, and they sold their part of it, because the Russians couldn't, unhinge them, or they couldn't they couldn't get them out. So they basically paid them off in tons of gold to get them out under Ivan the Terrible. But they warned them, and get this is weird. This is also a matter of history, that the Scythians controlled the eastern part of the northeastern part of the Crimea, and they were in an enclave there, and they practiced rituals of blood drinking. And the Cossacks had been at war with them for a long time. The Cossacks were thought of, though, as a superstitious people, but they believed that these Scythians lived underground. Get this. This is what they really believed. And what these beings did was they would come out at night, and they would kill the horses of the Cossacks. And so the Cossacks just kind of isolated them, kind of like the Aztecs did the Tlaxcalans, and just said, okay, they're going to have their own little enclave within whatever. Now, Paranormal Roundtable, which I don't know who's controlling that, it says here, Marcus was referring to this book about what he called the Scythian leeches. Yes, that is a fiction. Well, it's not. It's a fictional book, but it is based upon the actual Scythian people. The Scythian people, what I'm telling you, go and read about it. It's very interesting. They actually leave their homeland of Persia, and they end up in the Crimea. That is the truth. And it was like years ago, like in the 9th century or something like that. And so when you start looking at these people, and then they began to battle the Cossacks as the Cossacks began incursions, the Crimean people were actually preyed upon by these Scythians. And the Scythians' leaders were said to be immortal, and that they lived in the ground, not necessarily like inner earth, but in the ground. And there are a lot of references to vampires that come out of the region of Persia and their holdings. In particular, the Ottomans, the Turks, you know, they had places where they were known. There were even cities that were called the undead. Very interesting. There was one called Alado, which is no longer in existence. It was just completely destroyed by Mabad II because he said in his records that it was overrun with the undead. What does that mean? Like when somebody says that, you're going like, what is this weird shit? I mean, you know, you read these things and it's like you're just reading through history texts, you know, you're going blah, 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 blah. And then and then her blood was drank by these creatures. You're like, what the hell did I just read? Like, this is a matter of like history. So why would these beings there was a city in Samaria that was completely overrun by dogmen and destroyed overnight. And when it was relieved by their fellow Babylonians, there was nothing left but half-eaten people. This is a matter of Babylonian record. It was passed down to the Persians, who passed it down to the Ottomans, and it became a part of their history. Dog-headed creatures who did the same thing in the Indus Valley, who were even known as Black Sea traders that would trade with people. They couldn't speak, but they could handle weapons. And they existed within the earth. The Tamil culture believes that they had literally hives of these things, and that they were being spun off from some giant wolf-like creature that was constantly having babies. But the truth is, who knows? What if it's a civilization like the Anunnaki or whoever were just pumping these things out, terrifying the top side, hopefully bending humankind, making everyone scared and superstitious so that they could do what they do. Very interesting stuff.
Making them possibly like a security force to keep the workers in line.
Exactly. That was the original goal, and then they just kept making them because why not? I mean, you have the ability, why not do it? And keep everybody scared, keep them out of the woods so that you can do what you do. UFOs like to land in the woods and do what they do under the cover of darkness. And what better way to keep people in line than to have Bigfoot and Dogman running around out there eating people? So that they could snatch people up. Dogman and Bigfoot take their cut. Everybody's happy except for us humans because we're on the menu. People love to cling to the idea that we were made in God's image for one main reason, because that gives you power. But we were created by God, but not in the way people think we were. That's just my opinion, and I'm entitled to that. And I'm entitled to not be attacked, and you're entitled to leave and not listen if you don't want to. But what gives people comfort should be that Christ was here to expel all of that for you, not the idea that you were made by a God and that God that looks like you and that God has emotions and feelings and does everything like you. He's like a man. Because a lot of these fundamentalists, what they do is they cling to this and they love to think that God is angry, jealous, bitter, destructive, and violent like they are. Because they're angry, violent, bitter, and destructive people. They're basically buttholes, and they want to believe that they were made in God's image, and so I'm just like God. Well, no, you're not, because God doesn't have any of those characteristics. That's bullcrap. And I'm here to tell you it's bullcrap. God doesn't tell you to go and murder and rip children from their womb. So it says that in the Old Testament. So is that what you believe? Even though Jesus comes and he counters that, they still cling to it. They say, no, that's the God. Which one made me? That one there, the angry, jealous guy. That's the one. He's the one who told the Israelites to go and kill everybody, do all this bad stuff. That's what they want to believe. So they're going to be wholly ignorant and cling to that. because it's a lot more palatable than to be, hey, we're on the menu and we're at the mercy of these demonic reptilian overlords. You know, nobody wants to buy into that. That's scary as hell. And it's much more palatable to believe this other stuff. But you have the answer right there. God took mercy on us to pull us out of this time, whether it's the time of sorrows, revelations, whatever, the Kali Yuga, whatever religion you want to use. And he sent Christ to do that. And Christ is the way. If you call out to him, well, that's where you'll be, is with him. People don't like that. They want to believe in this Old Testament, angry, bitter, jealous, enraged Yahweh, who literally is described by David as a dragon. He describes a dragon, folks. I'm not talking about metaphorically. They always try to say that, well, they're talking about his anger. No, he is talking about a dragon. He describes him as a fire-breathing dragon that he's flying around in a ship. I mean, I don't know how to tell you this. I mean, you can't, and these preachers, I love to debate them and just call them out for the liars that they are. You're liars. If you're taking the 401c, you're taking the government's bait, and you are only teaching from this little circle of information, and you're stirring it around in your little pudding, and you're feeding it to your people like Bill Cosby handing out pudding pops. Come on, guys, just because we're eating the pudding. That's what they're doing, man. That's what they're literally doing. And they're like roofing their audience. And they get up there with these gigantic mega churches and they just talk in circles. And they use the Bible, and they talk in circles. That's all they do. And they're not saying a damn thing, and they're not enlightening you in any shape or form because, like I said, to quote our friend Tony Merkel and my dad, who said that years ago, it was something that's been said a long time, and Merkel made it popular now, and I'll give him credit for it. The truth will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. So what's going to happen? Yes, the Paranormal Roundtable says the Bible also refers to Satan as the great dragon. Yes, and Jesus calls the God that the Israelites were worshiping. Who does he say he is? He calls him Satan. He says, you are of Satan. Your father is Satan. You are of the synagogue of Satan. He was a murderer and a liar from the beginning, and you were just like him. He's literally telling you right there. But these people cannot grasp that. They can't get around that. So instead, they'd rather stone me to death. And if they had their chance, I promise you, truth, they would drag me out of my house and they would throw stones at my head until I was dead. But Jesus says, remember this, they hated me first. They hated him so much for what he told them that they had him killed. They drug him before the Romans and said, kill this guy. And the Pharisees did this, and the Romans were like, why? And they said, because he says that he is the Son of God, and his God is not our God. His Father is not our Father. His Father is not the God of Israel, because the God of Israel is Yahweh, and he's claiming that the God of Israel is Satan. So they killed him. I mean, I don't even understand like where the disconnect comes from other than the brainwashing that has been done by the church for so long. They have done this for so long that when you even go into researching about UFOs or aliens or anything like that, you're immediately declared apostate and a heretic. And anyone who's a fundamentalist Christian should turn away from that, because that automatically, just thinking about it, looking at it, or believing in it, or thinking that it could happen is demonic.
You want to hear something funny? Sure. I freaked out some Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's not hard to do, though.
Well, because I was walking out of my father's house one day, and these two ladies approached me. And it was like, they did the whole spiel and everything. And I was like, yeah, I believe in God. I also believe that he made Bigfoot, aliens, all kinds. I just started rambling off like all kinds of paranormal entities. And you could see these ladies get visibly shaken, start backing up, and was like, all right, you have a good day. And then they like ran back to their car. It was funny as hell. So it works, guys. It works.
Have you ever read the Book of Knowledge?
No, I haven't.
You got to read that. If you ever get time, like I'm an avid reader, so if you ever get time though in your hands, just read the Book of Knowledge. And it's not real big, but it's their like little made up version of the Bible. And if they ever come around, you can quote their little book. They get real upset. And I said, dude, you start talking about shale and start talking about hell, they get real aggravated. They literally, they want to be Jewish people. Like, that's what they are. They've taken Jesus out of everything. They really don't believe in Christ in the way that we would. Christ was just kind of like there, and they're kind of like wannabe Jewish people. That's what they are. And so they've made this whole belief that they're the chosen ones. But that's what everybody does. The Mormons do the same thing. Everybody does the same thing. They're like, we're the chosen ones. Everybody's the chosen ones. But you can't have, like, just like every little kid now wants to be a little girl wants to be a princess, and there's only so many kingdoms. Everybody's like, I'm the king. Like every rapper, every musician, I'm the king of this, I'm the king of that. There's only so many kingdoms. We can't all be kings, and we can't all be the chosen ones. We can't all be princes and princesses. It's like,
sorry, I'm just scrolling back. There was a comment that I saw that I wanted to adjust on. Where did it go? She says.
I see, Daniel, I don't agree with that. It says, what is with people saying the devil was misunderstood? The devil was misunderstood. He was the good guy. No. The devil's the devil no matter which way you play it. The Gnostics believe that the demiurge, the god of the Old Testament, one of the gods of the Old Testament, created this. And this world is fallible, and because it wasn't perfect, because the guy that created it wasn't perfect. This is what they believe. And that Satan is used as his kind of like slave to batter and beat down people. And Satan's job literally is to be the bad guy. He created like this whole play, which is a simplified version of saying that we were spun off from another world, and that world was like where we're at right now. And so we're being used to, what do you call it? Find the true nature of reality and everybody's consciousness and all that. I mean, that's just another way of saying that. I mean,
the true nature is we've been lied to since day one by everybody that's in power. Can we go back to high jump for a second?
Sure.
Admiral Bird. All right. So we were talking about this ice wall, and Admiral Richard Byrd came up. Now, the mission that he went on down to Antarctica was called Operation High Jump. Right. Now, when you take a step back and you look at it from perspective instead of perception, Operation High Jump. That when you think about there possibly being a quote unquote ice wall down there, that title of that mission takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it? Operation High Jump, high jumping over the wall.
Yeah.
Like they put this stuff out there for us. You gotta be discerning, and you gotta look for it. It's all the information you could ever want is all out there, guys. You just gotta have the patience and look for it. And be able to sit down and read and digest it. GW was also probably going to call the Watchtower. So now,
are you still talking about the Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, I was just reading something in the
Watchtower.
I thought that was funny as hell. I have nobody, and you know what? Since then, I think it got back to the grapevine. They told them what they told them what I look like, because I haven't been approached by a Jehovah's Witness since, and this was like 15 years ago. It works.
Well,
do it, everybody.
What's interesting about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and like, I don't know if anybody's interested. Hold on one second. My hat back on. I was trying to fix my hair because it was looking kind of weird. I'm not overly concerned with my appearance, but I don't want people to come to my channel for the first time and be like, God, that guy looks wild, man. I need to just be like you, man. Just wear a hoodie and be like real, like mysterious.
I only wear it because I'm bald, and the light will shine off my head blind.
Yeah, but dude, if being African bald is like better looking. It's like it just looks better than black people, man. When you have light skin, man, being bald looks funny, man. But then again, I don't know. My brother was bald for a long time, and he could grow hair, but he just shaved it all. But then his head just started to look weird as he got older. And I said, dude, it was like, when you start to shave your head and you have the part of the hair or whatever, and it's the rest of it's not there. But like, I think it just looks natural, though. I guess because we're used to that. Like, I mean, I don't know. Some of my heroes when I was younger, black black people like Marvin Hagler, you know, George Foreman, they were bald when I watched them box, you know, and I thought, man, that's cool, man. They look cool like that, you know. I never liked the boxers that had a bunch of hair. I always thought, like, especially if a guy had like longer hair or something. Just me as a kid, you know, like I didn't like wrestlers with long hair because I thought they looked weak or something, dude. You know what I mean? Like I didn't like Hulk Hogan because he had that like long hair, and I always thought he looked weak, dude. Like I don't know why that was. It's just like a perception in your head as a kid, you know.
No, I get it because he looks all bulky, and then you see this little flailing little thing going back there.
It doesn't look right, dude. You're sitting there going like, that guy's tough. He doesn't look tough, you know. Like I've never been afraid to fight a guy at all, really. But like fight a guy with long hair, just kind of like what? Like this dude.
Like I can't take this guy serious. His hair looks better than my girlfriend's hair. What the hell is going on?
Exactly. Putting it in a little bun or a man bun or a ponytail or something, and you're like, this guy, I'm gonna fight this guy. I don't know. I've never been surprised by a guy with long hair either. I've seen one long-haired guy. I've seen them fight other people and do well, but me personally in a fight with a long-haired person, never even came close, man. But one of the things I was going to say, though, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a very, very odd belief in what they believe. And see, Valerie Guy says Jehovah's Witnesses believe Jesus and Michael Archangel are the same. Yes and no. I'll put that comment up. What they actually believe is that Jesus is he is an archangel, and they believe that he was not fully divine, and they believe that he was in the Son of God as he was the first creation directly made from God, which is kind of weird. But then they get into this weird thing where he is equal to the Michael, the archangel. And I've argued the point back and forth with them. They have just a very strange belief. They have this special meal that they eat, you know, in honor of Jesus's death. They don't believe in the cross. They believe that Constantine created that as a symbol, which Constantine did in a way. But that was like in the 4th century or 3rd century AD. I can't remember which. But he was going to fight a great battle, and he saw a cross in the sky. And then he made it the state religion, which in Byzantium became the Greek Orthodox Church. And somebody, D-True says, how about Lennox Lewis? Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson notwithstanding, but other guys don't look real tough with all that hair. Even Joe Frazier, I didn't think he looked as tough as like George Foreman. I didn't think Muhammad Ali looked tough. And I always was amazed at him and Sugar Ray Leonard being able to beat some of these guys, you know, like the guys that they fought, you know. But anyway, we're getting off track here. So the point is like that the Jehovah's Witnesses have a very strange belief, but a lot of what they do and they preach and I've actually been to their service. I've been there. I've been to synagogue. I've been to Jamai. I've gone to with Jamai is something that you do in the Muslim faith. I've been to the mosque and I've been to their service. I've been to 2 different types of synagogues, 3 different types of mosques. And about 28 different, I think 28, I kept track at one point. I don't know if it's 28. No, because there was another one not too long ago. 29 different churches and 4 different Buddhist churches, 3 different Hindu temples. So I have been and attended many services from many different religions. Does that make me any of those religions? No, it does not. I'm observing and I'm just trying to learn. So that is how you learn. So before you go and tell everybody, yeah, I don't believe like those people, they're weird because they don't believe like me and book I like, so I read this book, you know. Maybe you should go and like actually read about what they believe. Now, I've never attended a Zoroastrian service. I've always wanted to. And I've also wanted to have a long conversation with the Yazidi Kurdish people because they have a very interesting take on it with the peacock god and all that, and how Lucifer was forgiven by the Most High, and he is actually in charge of and the god of this world. That's what the Yazidi believe. And they actually believe, and I don't believe this, I'm saying they believe this, that worship of him is okay because God, the main one true God, had forgiven him and given him this world so that he is the God that resides in the 7th heaven. Very bizarre, right? So they're looked at as apostates by the other Kurdish and the Turks and the Persians that or the Iranians that they live around don't like them, and they try to kill them because of their belief. And it all stems from the peacock god. But it's not much different than the demiurge who was like in charge, and he's supposedly ignorant of the truth, and the divine feminine, which would be the Mother Mary to some people. but would also be like God's holy bride. You know, God and the divine feminine, they exist in the 8th level, and the divine feminine, which is the Holy Spirit to them, some of them, actually breathe life into Jesus to make him go and testify to people and bring them out of this, because the ignorant demiurge that created this world created it imperfect. And some would be able to argue correctly in the way that the world is rather imperfect. You know what I mean? Like, it's not perfect. It is very imperfect. But wouldn't a perfect God create a perfect world? And then people say, well, it's a test. What does a perfect God need to make a test for? Why would a perfect God have any of our human characteristics? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And then they always end it with, well, it's not supposed to make sense. We're not supposed to be able to comprehend it. Okay, yeah, that's a very easy, just giving yourself an out there so you can cling to the very childish view that you were taught as a little kid in Sunday school. Okay, me personally, I want to know who I'm worshiping. And I want to know that I am worshiping the true Father of Christ, because that is who I cling to, and that is what I believe. And however he came to be, the God that he talks about seems to be a very different guy than the one in the Old Testament. And I'm sorry, I really am sorry. I do feel bad for the people who believe that way, and they get so mad with me, and I get the hate mail and the hate mail and the hate mail. But you know what I could have done? I could have done this YouTube thing, and I could have rode it to the finish line, and I could have just kept retelling people's encounters and toed the line and told everybody, yeah, I just believe like you. And some of my biggest donors who've turned their backs on me were fundamentalist Christian, and they're gone now. And that's unfortunate. It's very sad that I don't get as many donations as I used to. If you've been paying attention, they don't donate like they used to because they're gone. And one guy in particular was responsible for leading an exodus of whatever. But if you don't want to hear the truth, then you don't need to be here, because this is where you're going to get the real talk. So I have stood by I've stood by my principles on this, and I do what I do, and I say what I say because I do believe in what I say. And a lot of people don't like it, and they've turned away from me. And that's unfortunate. That's fine, though, because it's a small price to pay, because I'm not going to live a lie. And when I get the truth that comes to me, I'm going to give it to you.
Listen, people are gonna do that. You're gonna ruffle feathers with what you've been able to accomplish and what you're trying to bring forth. People, you're gonna ruffle a lot of feathers, Wolf. Yeah, you know that.
Yeah.
And the people who are backing away and don't want to, they're doing whatever they're doing. They don't have. I don't think they have the processing capability to understand what you're really trying to do here. Do you get what?
Yeah.
Is that making a little bit of sense? And they back away because they're subconsciously, maybe they're afraid their way of thinking is going to get transformed into by something you're saying or something like that. So they're putting up their walls and they're backing away and everything like that. But listen, if be open, if you're out there trying to get the information, you can't take what you want with a grain of salt. You can't pick and choose what you want to, who you want to listen to, what you want to listen to. If you want the information, you got to go to everybody, except maybe a few different people. I'm not going to say no names, but you get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad that it's come to that nowadays, where like you start saying certain things and you know that it's the truth, and people are like, you know what, he's full of crap, blah blah blah, and they start backing away. But it's why because they have been inherently trained to believe the Matrix or whatever the hell you want to quote it as. Like I posted in the Facebook group, I think the people that were in school that inherently had trouble in school, they were inherently tuning out the programming, right? Because that's
why in truth, I'm telling you, man, not to interrupt, I got to say this is why I invited so many of you to go to Truth's group. They got to go to your group, man, because you post a lot of really, really good stuff. I don't have a lot of time to post myself in Paranormal Roundtable, but a lot of people do. start posting your stuff in Paranormal Roundtable too, man, because that's where that about what you said about the people who were tuning out in school, dude.
Mm-hmm.
When I did good in school for one reason, I was able to memorize and regurgitate the bullshit that they wanted me to. Me and Joe Breezy were talking last night about being in these treatment center facilities so we could get out of being locked up in juvie. So what we did was we just played the role and said, yeah. Tell him what you want to hear. He was really stubborn and it took him a long time. I figured it out and said, look, you just got to tell him like this. Folks, I could have played everybody if I wanted to. I could have sat up here and pretended to believe stuff that, like everybody else, and I wasn't learning the truth and just said, well, my audience isn't ready to believe that, and I don't want to lose a third of them by coming out and telling the truth. So a third of the rebellious angels leave, whatever. That's what happens. Who cares? It happens. They don't want to follow the truth. They want to believe what they want to believe. Let them go. And so they did. And one of them, I tried to reach out to her, and we've been friends for 5 years. And I said, hey, what's going on? And she's like, it's my right not to listen to you, whatever. And I'm like, oh, but you're going to listen to this maniac who's basically talking about doing all kinds of things to me because according to him, I don't believe like him. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense there. But that is fundamentally at the end of this. That's what it is. It's a fundamentalist view, which is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's just like being fundamentally, whether you're Christian or Muslim, being fundamentalist. People do very dangerous things when they have a very rigid belief and they refuse to accept anything beyond that. And so I think what this particular individual is doing is he's playing on people's view of that. I don't think that's his real war because there are a lot of other people that he talks to and that he's friends with that believe way further in than I do. But yet he's still focusing on me. And those people have shows too, but he's not going around attacking them. So, I mean, it goes deeper than that. There's a lot more to it, but he's able to key in on that and use that. And I was told by other podcasters, YouTubers, and two of them in particular, who are my friends, I'm not going to mention names, but they told me, don't talk about that stuff and just focus on doing the encounters. And I'm like, okay, so basically I'm supposed to be quiet and just sit up here and repeat stories like some other podcasters do because that's made them really big and powerful. That's bullshit to me. That's no knock on them. That's great. That's what they do. And they stay above it all. And that's great. But I'm not here to do that. And if it means that people are going to persecute me and they're going to hate me, I just cling to what Jesus said. Remember, they hated me first. And that's the truth. So I'm going to keep saying what I believe is right. And I'm not going to let these people run the truth out of me. I'm not going to let them take my peace. And I'm not going to stop just because they feel uncomfortable about it. What it boils down to is they wanted control of my show. And these people wanted to be more a part of what the show was about than I was willing to give. And so they hatched a plan. And that's what they've been doing. They've been executing it step by step. But eventually they hit a wall that they couldn't penetrate. And I'm never going to allow them to take away what we've built and what we continue to build. And wherever the truth takes us, no matter how uncomfortable or gut-wrenching it is, I've had to step back and look at myself and, do this introspective thing and just say, man, I'm not right. Some of this stuff that is going on, I have to say that it's not correct. I've been believing things a certain way, but you have to look at the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. They just aren't.
Because they're small-minded, they're narrow-minded. Like I said, they've been trained to think that way, and that's from years of public schooling. Like I said, a perfect example. I hated school. People like, yo, you're very intelligent. I hated school. I used to sleep in school all the time. And what happened? I had a social studies teacher. She said, yo, you failed for the year. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yo, if you can pass the final, I'll give you 80 for the year. I was like, all right, bet. I passed the shit with a 90. That's sleeping every day. Like they don't want thinkers. They want people to regurgitate information. They want people to fall in line. And that's what I'm finding out is going on in the paranormal community or whatnot. They don't want free thinkers. They want people doing their own thing. They want people to fall in line and do what they do and everything like that. It don't work like that, right? Stop trying to impose yourself on people.
Yep. And that's pretty much it, folks. We're going to run. Truth. You coming back next Saturday? Can you make it back?
Yeah, man. I work 8 to 4 on Saturdays. I am good.
Great, man. Yeah, because I like the chemistry between me, you, and Rob and Chris. It works, man. It works. And you guys, we go around the horn and we talk about some things. And when we make the jump to Rumble the second Saturday of May, that's when we're really going to turn up the heat. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We can't say a whole lot. I said a lot of things today. I've said a lot more on the Saturday shows. Tomorrow night, folks, Paranormal Roundtable, and on Sunday we drop it like it's hot, like always. And I'm going to be talking about some stories. I got some stuff going on. Let me put my glasses on and show my age here. I got to wear them.
Oh, I hate getting old, dude. I
know, dude. Doesn't it suck, man? It sucks. So we're going to tell the story of the ship from the Caspian Sea tomorrow. And then we're going to go from there. We got some other things. A woman named Mara Gomez, who actually gave me a lot of revelations. And she has proven to me that she's very powerful in what she says and does. And so, yes, we obviously didn't fill up the chat today like we normally do. We almost hit 400, but that's okay because Saturday is not everybody's cup of tea. The ones that are here, whether you believe it or not, I thank you for being here. I thank you for donating to the chat because it does help us. We're trying to get equipment together and a legal fund at the same time so that we can go out and do what we got to do and do some chanclas on the ground, as Joe Breezy calls it. And so we can go flip-flops on the ground out there. And we can do what we got to do. And that equipment's not cheap. And I need a new computer for this study. And this camera is not the best. And so the microphone's good, but we have our needs. And so thank you for everybody that donates and helps out. We don't ask for donations. They're not expected at all. But we appreciate those that do. And like I said I did a show earlier today and I told that story. Go back and listen to that. I think it's a very pivotal story that needs to be heard from Justin. But I'm going to tell you this. Donations are not expected, but they're appreciated. But if you feel anything in your heart at all, like you don't feel like you should donate, or if you feel like there's something you want or need that's more important than helping us, then by all means, you do that. You follow your gut. You follow your heart. God will take care. He'll do what needs to be done. He always comes through for us. He's never failed me. And I've been in my quest to find the truth. Put Truth's information back up there again. Somebody said, "What's Truth's channel again?" So they can find it.
So JG, the channel name is An Impromptu Truth, and the Facebook group is the same name, An Impromptu Truth.
Yeah, and so what we need to do too is like on an off night or something when we're not doing anything, maybe I can hop on over there and bring some people, and we can chop it up over there again. So
yeah, definitely, dude.
Yeah, we had a good show that one time where we ended up with Garetano on there, and a bunch of people just jumped on.
When you gonna come on the wrestling channel? Are you gonna come on the new wrestling channel?
I can talk about wrestling all day long. I'm not a huge fan, but my brother was, and all my cousins and all my friends were. So I ended up watching a lot of it just because other people watched it, and I didn't protest and tell them I don't want to watch this, but I was exposed to it. I'm a Road Warriors fan all the way, dude. Road Warriors were my favorite.
I really think you nowadays with Vinnie Mac gone, I think you'll really get into it. It's getting really good.
If I had more time to watch, I would. But it's like a soap opera. And then when you join in the middle of it, you don't know what the hell's going on. You got to try to go back and figure it out. That's the problem.
Yep.
Yeah. But I remember the old days, man. The Von Erichs. They made a movie about the Von Erichs. Did you see that?
Yeah, they did. Wasn't like Zac Efron like the main character or one of them?
Yeah, I think so.
Like he's strong as well. Yeah.
The Ultimate Warrior. Somebody said Ultimate Warrior. Boy, and then Sting finally retired. What was he, 66 years old or something? It was unbelievable.
You can't, because you still got Ric Flair wrestling. Ric Flair's like in his 80s. So,
well, dude, if you look at my friend Lance Hoyt. Now he's been on the show, and Lance is still wrestling. He's with New World. I think, is he still with New World Japan? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, he's the Murder Hawk, but he's like 3 years older than me. He was the quarterback at Texas State back when we were in college, and yeah. So I mean, look at him. I mean, he's still going, man. Paranormal
Little-
Roundtable says, oh wait, he
that
says
nasty old man.
road warriors would shame people for being fat and drinking alcohol. Yeah, I remember the animal. He'd come out and be like, "All you people out there, you fat asses, drinking beer, eating potato chips, sitting on the couch. You know what I do to you? I body slam you, your wife, and your children." Literally come out and say shit. He's talking about body slamming people's kids.
The two best guys on the mic to me were Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes back in like the
Oh yeah,
like, in the
Dusty
80s.
Rhodes is unbelievable.
Oh.
Ric Flair, but woo, woo. Oh shit, dude! That brings back memories, dude. Ric Flair would come out, the Nature Boy, the Nature Boy, and they would do these speeches. Oh my god, dude!
Like they have specific like Instagram channels dedicated to just Ric Flair going off on tangents and Dusty Rhodes going off on tangents. And every couple of days, I find myself like diving into those. They're funny as hell.
Macho Man too, man. Oh yeah. Sometimes I wear my Macho Man shirts. I got a couple of them. He was my guy. The queen rises to the top, brother. All the time, man. All the time. All right, guys. Well, I'm out of here, man. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to everybody that donated. We appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks for joining me, Truth. We'll see you next Saturday. Folks, I'm going to send you a bunch of invitations if you're on Facebook, so you can go to join Truth's Facebook group, and you can keep up with all things Impromptu Truth. This guy's got a lot of knowledge. He's got a lot to say. A real person who's had an abduction scenario happen to him more than once. People try to say it's this, it's that, and the other. He can tell you what it is. We'll get into that next Saturday, folks.
They're not nice.
The aliens come into my room. They're in for a rude awakening, brother. I'm gonna slow them down like no other.
Could you imagine Macho Man being abducted by aliens? That would be the funniest damn thing ever.
Get your hands off of me! You look like Sonic the Hedgehog's mother.
Oh, just playing his voice in my head.
Macaroni jabroni. Oh man,
that should be hilarious.
Yeah, dude. I don't think they do abduct wrestlers. I just don't. I think if you're protection, you need to go and become a wrestler. True, they won't mess with you. That's it. You'll learn the Iron Claw. You know, all the suplex. That's it. It's over. Done deal, dude. Maybe that's why Sting was wrestled so long. That way he could avoid abduction.
I know how to do the perfect plex. I'll get him.
Get him. All right, Truth. And say hey to Bass for me, man.
Definitely.
Yeah,
all right, well, take it easy. I'll see you next week, dude.
Okay, brother. All right, bye.
All right, bye.
So that's Truth from an Impromptu Truth. Good friend of mine, really good guy. I talk to him pretty regularly. Him and Bass both. Michael Watson and James Watson, great kids, man. They're not kids, but great guys and just really cool people. Everybody that showed up, I know some people left a little early, probably bounced because you didn't like what was being said or whatever was being said. The bottom line is we're just trying to get to the truth. I don't know that I subscribe to any of it. All I know is that I'm trying to find my way. What I do subscribe to and I do believe in is my Lord Jesus Christ, and he's my Lord and Savior, and I subscribe to God, the true God, not necessarily the God of just some book that some people wrote based on another book that they wrote on another book and another book. Because Jesus tells us something different there. People need to understand that. I'm not attacking you, but I could easily have slipped in, like a snake and just been like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to pretend like I believe like this because that's going to keep the donors in the chat and keep people giving me money. And that's going to make everybody like me. And I'm just going to be whatever. I won't do that. I won't do that. I'm never going to come to you and tell you a bunch of bullshit. I'm not going to do that. I don't come to you and tell you, I got a true story that somebody gave me. How do I know? Sounds believable. And when I put it together, it sounds good. But I can promise you when they tell the story, it doesn't really always sound like that. It doesn't flow. I don't edit it on the computer. I have to edit it in my mind to make it, Knowing this, that's one of the reasons why I know that certain books, not just the Bible, but a lot of these religious texts have been written by man and rewritten by man and tampered with. Because I know how storytelling works. And who better to tell you this than somebody who retells people's encounters? And I haven't had many people complain. There's a little bit like, oh, they left something out. And I'll tell them, look, when you talked to me, did you tell me this? And yes, it has happened a couple times that I have left. I'm going to say this, the truth. I've left a few times. I've left things out, but I don't add things to it. And I think it's more important that maybe I forget a detail or two than if I'm adding bull crap to it, because then you're sensationalizing and basically lying. And so what I'm trying to do is give you stories, encounters that people have had, and I'm telling you, this is what they told me. Some of these people, when it sounds too much, I don't even do it. And there have been a few people who got ticked off at me, and they've ran to other groups and said all kinds of things about me. What they're not telling you is that I rejected their stories. One of them was at my conference. She gave me a story. I didn't believe it. It sounded like Dobby the house elf from whatever it's called, Harry Potter. Right? So that person went on the offensive. They joined the other team, and they went out on the attack. Tell the truth of why you did what you did. Tell the truth. See, the truth seems to escape a lot of people. But I'm out here, and I could have easily just kept going the way I was. But I didn't believe in that. I believe in telling you like it is. Not like the way I wish it was, or the way you wish it was, or the way we want it to be. Because what does that matter? Because the way you want it to be, that's not reality. There's a reality that we wish for, that we hope for, and then there's one that exists. Two different things. And so that's all I have to say for tonight, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for those that showed up. Thank you for those that donated. And I will be with you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in studio with Anthony and Tony, and we'll be doing what we do. Thank you and good night.